What if the key to getting what you want isn't what you say, but how you read what others aren't saying? This audiobook will reveal the hidden art of social intelligence, the ability to instantly decode people's true thoughts and respond in ways that create connection, influence, and success, no matter what situation you're facing. Are you ready to see people clearly for the first time? Chapter 1. The Hidden Language of Human Behavior. Picture this. You're sitting in a meeting, and your colleague says, "I think your idea is really interesting." The words sound positive, but something feels off. There's a slight tightness around their eyes. Their shoulders are angled away from you, and their voice has that particular tone that suggests they're not being entirely honest. What you're experiencing is the hidden language of human behavior, a complex communication system that operates beneath our conscious awareness, but carries more truth than words ever could. This is the foundation of social intelligence, and it's happening in every interaction you have, whether you realize it or not. Here's what most people don't understand. We're constantly communicating on multiple levels simultaneously. While our mouths are saying one thing, our bodies, voices, and subtle behaviors are often saying something completely different. And here's the kicker. People trust the nonverbal signals more than the words. Always. Think about it. When someone says, "I'm fine," with crossed arms, a tight jaw, and a clipped tone, do you believe the words or the body language? Your brain automatically processes all these signals and gives you that gut feeling that something's wrong. That's your social intelligence at work, picking up on the hidden language that most people never consciously notice. The problem is that we've been taught to focus primarily on words. We listen to what people say and respond accordingly, missing the vast majority of the communication that's actually happening. It's like trying to understand a movie by only listening to the dialogue while ignoring the visuals, music, and emotional undertones. Let me give you a real-world example. Sarah walks into her boss's office for her performance review. Her boss smiles and says, "Great to see you, Sarah. Please, have a seat." But Sarah notices that the smile doesn't reach his eyes. He's shuffling papers unnecessarily, and his voice is slightly higher than usual. These subtle cues tell her that this conversation might not go as well as she hoped, allowing her to adjust her approach accordingly. This hidden language operates on several levels. First, there's body language, the positioning of arms, legs, torso, and head. These positions reveal comfort levels, interest, defensiveness, and attraction. Someone who's genuinely interested in what you're saying will typically lean in slightly, maintain eye contact, and orient their body toward you. Someone who's uncomfortable or wants to leave will create barriers with their arms, angle their body away, or position themselves near an exit. Then there's facial expressions and micro-expressions, tiny muscle movements that flash across someone's face in fractions of a second. These reveal true emotions before the person has a chance to consciously control them. A genuine smile engages the muscles around the eyes, creating small wrinkles at the corners. A fake smile only moves the mouth muscles, leaving the eyes unchanged. Voice tone and pace carry enormous amounts of information. When someone is nervous, their voice often becomes higher and faster. When they're trying to convince you of something they don't really believe, you might hear slight hesitation or a subtle change in vocal rhythm. When they're genuinely excited, their voice becomes more animated and varied in pitch. But here's where it gets really interesting. These signals don't operate in isolation. They work together to create what researchers call behavioral clusters. It's not just one crossed arm that indicates defensiveness. It's crossed arms plus a tight jaw, plus shallow breathing, plus a slight backward lean. When you start reading these clusters instead of individual signals, your accuracy in understanding others increases dramatically. The key is learning to trust your instincts, while developing the skill to consciously observe these patterns. Your brain is already processing this information. That's why you sometimes get a feeling about someone or sense that something's off in a conversation. Social intelligence is about bringing this unconscious processing into conscious awareness, so you can respond more effectively. Here's your first tactic exercise. For the next week, practice what I call signal spotting. During conversations, pay attention to one nonverbal element at a time. Today, focus on eye contact patterns. Tomorrow, notice hand gestures. The next day, listen to voice tone changes. Don't try to analyze everything at once. Just build your awareness gradually. You'll start to notice fascinating patterns. People who are lying or uncomfortable often have difficulty maintaining natural eye contact. They either avoid it completely or overcompensate with intense staring. People who are genuinely interested in you will naturally synchronize their body language with yours, subtly mirroring your posture and gestures. One of the most powerful aspects of the hidden language is what researchers call emotional leakage. This happens when someone is trying to hide their true feelings, but their real emotions leak through in subtle ways. Maybe they're trying to appear calm during a tense discussion, but you notice their foot tapping rapidly under the table, or their voice becomes slightly strained when discussing a particular topic. Understanding this hidden language also helps you become more aware of your own signals. You might discover that you unconsciously cross your arms when you disagree with someone, or that your voice becomes flat when you're bored. This self-awareness allows you to consciously adjust your nonverbal communication to better match your intentions. The beautiful thing about developing this skill is that it creates a positive feedback loop. As you become better at reading others, you become more responsive to their needs and emotions. This makes people feel more understood and connected to you, which improves your relationships and social interactions overall. Remember, the goal isn't to become a mind reader or to manipulate others. It's to develop a deeper understanding of human nature so you can connect more authentically and respond more appropriately. When you can read the hidden language of behavior, you can adjust your approach, offer support when someone needs it, and navigate social situations with greater confidence and effectiveness. People have been communicating this way for thousands of years. It's time you learn to speak the language. Chapter 2: Why we misread people, and how to stop. Let me tell you about David, a well-meaning manager who completely misread his team member, Jessica, during a crucial project meeting. Jessica sat quietly, didn't contribute much to the discussion, and seemed withdrawn. David interpreted this as disengagement, and later criticized her for not being a team player. What he didn't realize was that Jessica had just received some difficult personal news and was actually processing the information while trying to stay professional. His criticism not only hurt Jessica, but also damaged their working relationship for months. This scenario happens countless times every day, and it illustrates one of the biggest challenges in social intelligence. We don't see people as they are. We see them through the lens of our own biases, assumptions, and emotional filters. Understanding why we misread people is the first step toward developing more accurate social perception. The human brain is essentially a prediction machine. It's constantly trying to make sense of the world around us by filling in gaps with assumptions based on our past experiences, cultural background, and current emotional state. This process happens so quickly and automatically that we rarely question whether our interpretations are accurate. We just assume they are. Here's the problem. Our brains are wired for efficiency, not accuracy. They use mental shortcuts called heuristics to quickly categorize and interpret social information. While these shortcuts can be useful in many situations, they also lead to systematic errors in how we perceive and judge others. One of the most common perceptual errors is what psychologists call the fundamental attribution error. This is our tendency to attribute other people's behavior to their character or personality, while attributing our own behavior to situational factors. When you're late to a meeting, it's because traffic was terrible, or your previous meeting ran long. When someone else is late, it's because they're disorganized or don't respect other people's time. This bias affects how we interpret virtually every social interaction. If someone seems cold or distant, we assume they're unfriendly by nature rather than considering that they might be having a bad day, dealing with personal issues, or simply feeling overwhelmed. If someone disagrees with us, we might assume they're being difficult rather than considering that they might have valid concerns or different information. Another major source of misreading is what I call emotional projection. This happens when we interpret others' behavior through the lens of our own current emotional state. If you're feeling insecure, you're more likely to interpret neutral expressions as disapproval. If you're stressed, you might read urgency or anxiety in others' behavior that isn't actually there. If you're in a good mood, you might miss signs of distress in others because you're unconsciously expecting everyone to share your positive state. Cultural and generational differences create another layer of misunderstanding. What constitutes appropriate eye contact, personal space, or emotional expression varies dramatically across cultures. A direct communication style that's valued in one culture might be perceived as rude or aggressive in another. Similarly, different generations have different norms around technology use, formality, and social interaction that can lead to misinterpretation. The confirmation bias also plays a huge role in social misreading. Once we form an initial impression of someone, We tend to notice information that confirms that impression while ignoring or dismissing contradictory evidence. If you decide someone is arrogant based on a first interaction, you'll pay more attention to behaviors that support this view while overlooking signs of humility or insecurity. Here's where it gets really tricky. Our own insecurities and fears often distort how we interpret others' behavior. If you're worried about being judged, you might interpret a neutral expression as disapproval. If you're concerned about being liked, you might read rejection into behaviors that have nothing to do with you. Our internal emotional state creates a filter that colors everything we see. The good news is that once you understand these perceptual traps, you can start to counteract them. The first step is developing what I call interpretive humility, the recognition that your initial reading of someone might be wrong. This doesn't mean doubting yourself constantly, but rather holding your interpretations lightly and being open to new information. Here's a practical technique I call the 3 interpretation rule. When you find yourself making a judgment about someone's behavior, force yourself to come up with at least 2 alternative explanations. If someone seems angry, maybe they're actually frustrated, overwhelmed, or dealing with something unrelated to you. If someone appears disinterested, perhaps they're processing information, feeling tired, or simply have a different communication style. Another powerful tool is the internal state check. Before interpreting someone else's behavior, take a moment to notice your own emotional state. Are you stressed, excited, worried, or confident? How might this internal state be affecting your perception? Sometimes simply acknowledging your own emotional filter can help you see more clearly. Pay attention to your automatic assumptions, especially about people's motivations. Instead of assuming someone is being difficult because they enjoy conflict, consider that they might be advocating for something important to them, feeling unheard, or operating from different information than you have. The timing of your observations also matters. People behave differently when they're tired, stressed, excited, or dealing with personal challenges. The behavior you observe once might not be representative of how someone typically acts. Look for patterns over time rather than making judgments based on isolated incidents. Context is crucial. The same behavior can mean completely different things in different situations. Someone who seems withdrawn in a large group meeting might be quite engaged in a smaller, more intimate setting. Someone who appears confident in their area of expertise might seem uncertain when discussing unfamiliar topics. Practice separating observation from interpretation. Instead of thinking John is being defensive, try John crossed his arms and his voice became tighter when we discussed the budget. This small shift helps you stay closer to the actual data rather than jumping to conclusions. Remember that people are complex and multifaceted. The shy person might be incredibly funny once you get to know them. The person who seems aloof might actually be deeply caring but express it differently than you do. The colleague who appears disorganized might have a different system that works well for them. Developing accurate social perception is an ongoing process. It requires patience, humility, and a genuine curiosity about others. The goal isn't to become a perfect reader of human behavior. It's to become more accurate, more empathetic, and more effective in your interactions with others. When you stop misreading people, something beautiful happens. Your relationships become more authentic, your communication becomes more effective, and your ability to help and connect with others increases dramatically. You start seeing people as they really are, not as projections of your own assumptions and fears. Chapter 3: Emotional Contagion. How moods transfer without words. Have you ever walked into a room and immediately felt the tension, even though no one said a word? Or found yourself feeling inexplicably happy after spending time with a cheerful friend? Maybe you've noticed how one person's bad mood can somehow spread through an entire office like a virus, affecting everyone's energy and productivity. What you're experiencing is emotional contagion, one of the most powerful and least understood aspects of human social behavior. It's the phenomenon where emotions literally transfer from one person to another, often without either person realizing it's happening. Understanding this invisible force is crucial for developing social intelligence, because it affects every interaction you have. Here's what's fascinating. Emotional contagion happens automatically and unconsciously. Your brain is constantly scanning the emotional state of people around you and subtly adjusting your own emotional state to match theirs. It's an ancient survival mechanism that helped our ancestors quickly assess whether a situation was safe or dangerous, based on the emotional reactions of others in their group. The process works through multiple channels simultaneously. First, There's what researchers call primitive emotional contagion, the automatic mimicry of others' facial expressions, voice tones, and body language. When someone smiles at you, your facial muscles automatically begin to mirror that smile, even if you're not consciously aware of it. This physical mimicry then triggers corresponding emotional responses in your brain. Mirror neurons play a crucial role in this process. These specialized brain cells fire both when you perform an action and when you observe someone else performing the same action. They're constantly creating a neurological bridge between you and the people around you, allowing you to literally feel what others are feeling. But emotional contagion goes beyond simple mimicry. It also involves what psychologists call emotional convergence, the tendency for people in close proximity to gradually sync their emotional states over time. This is why couples often develop similar moods, why team members start to share emotional attitudes about projects, and why family dynamics can create persistent emotional climates that affect everyone in the household. The speed of emotional contagion varies depending on several factors. Negative emotions tend to spread faster than positive ones, a phenomenon that makes evolutionary sense since detecting potential threats quickly was crucial for survival. This is why one person's anxiety can rapidly spread through a group, while it might take longer for enthusiasm to catch on. The strength of emotional contagion also depends on your relationship with the person whose emotions you're picking up. You're more likely to catch emotions from people you're close to, respect, or identify with. This is why a leader's emotional state has such a powerful impact on their team, or why a parent's mood can so quickly affect their children. Your own emotional state influences how susceptible you are to emotional contagion. When you're feeling emotionally stable and centered, you're less likely to be overwhelmed by others' emotions. But when you're stressed, tired, or emotionally vulnerable, you become much more susceptible to catching whatever emotions are floating around you. Understanding emotional contagion helps explain many social phenomena that might otherwise seem mysterious. Why do some people seem to drain your energy while others energize you? Why do certain group meetings feel productive and positive, while others feel heavy and contentious? Why do some people seem to have a natural ability to lift others' spirits while others consistently bring down the mood? The key to managing emotional contagion is first becoming aware of it. Start paying attention to how your emotional state changes in different social situations. Notice which people tend to leave you feeling energized versus depleted. Observe how your own mood affects the people around you. Here's a practical exercise. For 1 week, keep a simple emotional log. Note your emotional state before and after significant social interactions. You'll start to see patterns, certain people or situations that consistently affect your mood in predictable ways. This awareness is the first step in learning to manage the process. Once you're aware of emotional contagion, you can begin to use it strategically. If you want to help someone feel more relaxed, you can consciously regulate your own emotional state to project calmness. If you want to energize a group, you can deliberately cultivate enthusiasm and let it spread naturally. This isn't about being fake or manipulative. It's about being intentional with your emotional presence. Just as you might dress appropriately for different occasions, you can learn to adjust your emotional state to be more helpful and effective in different social contexts. One of the most powerful applications of understanding emotional contagion is in leadership. Leaders who are aware of how their emotions affect others can create more positive, productive environments. If you're in a leadership position, your emotional state isn't just terse, it's organizational. Your team will unconsciously mirror your stress, enthusiasm, confidence, or anxiety. Building emotional resilience is crucial for managing emotional contagion. This means developing the ability to maintain your emotional equilibrium, even when surrounded by strong emotions from others. Techniques like deep breathing, mindfulness, and conscious emotional regulation can help you stay centered while still remaining empathetic and responsive to others. It's also important to recognize when you need to protect yourself from negative emotional contagion. If you're consistently around people who are angry, anxious, or depressed, you need strategies to maintain your own emotional health. This might mean limiting your exposure, consciously counteracting negative emotions with positive practices, or seeking support from emotionally stable people. The flip side is learning to be a positive emotional influence. When you cultivate genuine positivity, calmness, and enthusiasm, you naturally become someone others want to be around. Your emotional state becomes a gift you give to others, contributing to better relationships and more positive social environments. Remember that emotional contagion works both ways. Just as you can catch others' emotions, they can catch yours. This gives you tremendous power to influence the emotional climate of your relationships and social situations. Use this power wisely and compassionately. Practice emotional awareness, not just of your own state, but of the emotional undercurrents in your environment. Learn to read the emotional temperature of a room and adjust your approach accordingly. Sometimes the most socially intelligent thing you can do is consciously shift your own emotional state to help shift the collective mood. Emotional contagion is neither good nor bad. It's simply a fundamental aspect of human nature. The key is learning to work with it consciously rather than being unconsciously controlled by it. When you understand how emotions spread and how to manage this process, you become more effective at creating the kinds of relationships and social environments you want to be part of. Chapter 4: The Power of First Impressions. Within 7 seconds of meeting someone, you've already formed a complex set of judgments about their competence, trustworthiness, intelligence, and likability. They've done the same about you. This isn't shallow or superficial. It's a fundamental aspect of human psychology that has shaped our social interactions for thousands of years. What's remarkable is how much information your brain processes in those first few seconds. You're unconsciously evaluating facial expressions, body language, vocal tone, dress, grooming, and dozens of other subtle cues. Your brain is essentially asking, is this person safe? Are they competent? Can I trust them? Do I want to connect with them? The challenge is that first impressions are formed so quickly and automatically that they often bypass conscious thought entirely. By the time you realize you're forming an impression, it's already formed. And here's the kicker. Once formed, first impressions are remarkably resistant to change. Psychologists call this the primacy effect, the tendency to give more weight to information encountered early in a relationship. This means that whether you realize it or not, you're constantly making first impressions. Every time you enter a room, answer a phone call, or interact with someone new, you're broadcasting information about yourself that others are using to form lasting judgments. The question isn't whether this will happen. It's whether you'll be intentional about the impression you create. Let's start with what people actually notice in those crucial first 7 seconds. Physical appearance is obviously important, but it's not just about being attractive or well-dressed. It's about what your appearance communicates about your attention to detail, self-respect, and understanding of social contexts. Someone who dresses appropriately for the situation signals that they understand social norms and respect the people they're meeting. But appearance is just the beginning. Your posture communicates confidence or insecurity, energy or fatigue. Someone who stands tall with shoulders back and makes appropriate eye contact immediately signals competence and self-assurance. Someone who slouches, avoids eye contact, or fidgets communicates uncertainty or discomfort. Facial expressions are incredibly powerful in first impressions. A genuine smile, one that engages the muscles around the eyes, creates an immediate sense of warmth and approachability. But here's what many people don't realize. The expression on your face before you smile is often more important than the smile itself. If you look annoyed, distracted, or uncomfortable before putting on a pleasant expression, people will notice the disconnect. Your voice carries tremendous weight in first impressions. The tone, pace, and volume of your voice communicate confidence, nervousness, intelligence, and emotional state. Someone who speaks clearly and at an appropriate volume suggests self-assurance and consideration for others. Someone who speaks too quickly might seem nervous or inconsiderate, while someone who speaks too slowly might appear unsure or condescending. The way you enter a space also shapes first impressions. Do you walk in confidently and purposefully, or do you hesitate and seem uncertain? Do you scan the room briefly to get oriented, or do you avoid eye contact and seem uncomfortable? These behaviors happen in the first few seconds but create lasting impressions about your social confidence and situational awareness. Here's what's fascinating about first impressions. They're not just about the information you're consciously trying to communicate. They're also about the unconscious signals you're sending. If you're feeling anxious about making a good impression, that anxiety will leak through in subtle ways. Tension in your jaw, slight stiffness in your movements, or a forced quality to your smile. People will pick up on these signals even if they can't articulate what they're noticing. The context in which you meet someone dramatically affects first impressions. The same person might create very different impressions in a business meeting versus a casual social gathering. Understanding the context and adjusting your presentation accordingly is a key aspect of social intelligence. Cultural factors play a huge role in first impressions. What's considered appropriate eye contact, personal space, volume of voice, and style of dress vary significantly across cultures. Being aware of these differences and adapting appropriately shows cultural sensitivity and emotional intelligence. Now let's talk about how to create positive first impressions consistently. The foundation is authenticity. Trying to be someone you're not is exhausting and ultimately unsustainable. Instant. Focus on presenting the best version of yourself. This means being well-groomed, appropriately dressed, and emotionally regulated before entering social situations. Preparation is crucial. Before important meetings or social events, take a few minutes to check your appearance, regulate your emotional state, and clarify your intentions. What kind of impression do you want to create? How do you want people to feel after interacting with you? Having this clarity helps you show up more intentionally. Body language fundamentals include standing or sitting up straight, making appropriate eye contact, and using open gestures. Avoid crossed arms, fidgeting, or positioning yourself in ways that create barriers between you and others. Practice what researchers call confident posture, taking up appropriate space without seeming aggressive or dominating. Voice management is often overlooked, but incredibly important. Practice speaking clearly and at an appropriate volume. Avoid uptalk, ending statements with a rising intonation that makes them sound like questions, and vocal fry, that creaky sound that can make you seem less credible. Record yourself speaking and listen for patterns you might want to adjust. Facial expressions should be genuine and appropriate to the situation. Practice relaxing your facial muscles and maintaining a pleasant, open expression. Work on making your smiles more genuine by thinking about something that actually makes you happy rather than just arranging your features into a smile shape. The greeting is often the most crucial moment for first impressions. Whether it's a handshake, a wave, or a verbal greeting, make it confident and appropriate to the context. A firm handshake with appropriate eye contact signals confidence and respect. A warm but professional greeting helps establish the right tone for the interaction. Remember that first impressions are about more than just seeming likable. You want to communicate competence, trustworthiness, and authenticity. This means being present and engaged in the interaction, showing genuine interest in others, and demonstrating that you understand the social situation you're in. One crucial aspect that many people overlook is the impression you create when you think no one important is watching. How you treat service workers, how you behave in elevators, how you handle minor frustrations. These moments often create the most lasting impressions because they reveal your true character. Finally, remember that while first impressions are important, they're not permanent. If you feel you've made a poor first impression, you can work to change it over time through consistent positive behavior. The key is not to be discouraged by a single interaction, but to keep focusing on showing up as your best self. The power of first impressions isn't about being perfect or manipulating others' perceptions. It's about being intentional and authentic in how you present yourself, understanding that these initial moments set the tone for all future interactions. When you master the art of positive first impressions, you create more opportunities for meaningful connections and successful relationships. Chapter 5. Microexpressions. What the face reveals in half a second. Imagine having the ability to see someone's true emotions before they even realize they're feeling them. Picture being able to detect when someone is lying, hiding fear, or suppressing anger, all by catching a fleeting expression that lasts less than half a second. This isn't science fiction, it's the reality of microexpressions, one of the most powerful tools in social intelligence. Microexpressions are involuntary facial expressions that reveal genuine emotion before conscious thought can intervene. They happen so quickly, typically lasting between 1/25th and 1/5 of a second, that most people never consciously notice them, but your brain processes them, contributing to those gut feelings you get about people's true intentions or emotional states. The fascinating thing about microexpressions is that they're universal, regardless of culture, age, or background. Humans display the same basic facial expressions for fundamental emotions like happiness, sadness, anger, fear, surprise, disgust, and contempt. This universality makes them incredibly reliable indicators of genuine emotional states. Here's why microexpressions are so revealing. They occur before the conscious mind can interfere. When you feel a surge of anger, your facial muscles automatically begin to contract into an angry expression. Within milliseconds, your conscious mind might recognize that showing anger isn't appropriate in this situation, so you suppress or modify the expression. But that initial genuine flash of emotion has already occurred, and trained observers can catch it. Let's break down the 7 basic microexpressions that everyone displays. Happiness is perhaps the easiest to recognize. The corners of the mouth turn up. And genuine happiness also engages the muscles around the eyes, creating those telltale crow's feet. But here's what many people don't realize. A fake smile only engages the mouth muscles, leaving the eyes unchanged. This is why some smiles feel warm and genuine while others feel forced or mechanical. Sadness creates a distinctive pattern with the inner corners of the eyebrows raising and drawing together, the upper eyelid drooping slightly, and the corners of the mouth turning down. It's often one of the most subtle expressions, but once you know what to look for, it becomes quite recognizable. Anger is characterized by lowered eyebrows, tightened lips, and a hard stare. The jaw often clenches, and the nostrils may flare slightly. What's interesting about anger microexpressions is that they often appear before someone is consciously aware they're becoming angry, giving you advance warning that a conversation might be heading in a difficult direction. Fear shows up as raised eyebrows, widened eyes, and often a slightly opened mouth. The facial muscles become tense, and there's often a subtle backward movement of the head. Fear microexpressions can be particularly valuable to notice, because they might indicate that someone feels threatened or unsafe in a way they're not expressing verbally. Surprise involves raised eyebrows, wide eyes, and an open mouth. It's typically a brief expression that quickly transitions to another emotion. Genuine surprise is symmetrical. Both sides of the face react equally. If you see asymmetrical surprise, it might indicate that the person isn't genuinely surprised by whatever just happened. Disgust creates a wrinkled nose, raised upper lip, and often a slight turning away movement. It's not just about physical disgust. People often display disgust microexpressions when they're morally offended or disagree strongly with something they're hearing. Contempt is unique because it's asymmetrical, typically showing as a slight raising of one corner of the mouth. It indicates a feeling of superiority or disdain, and can be particularly damaging in relationships. When you see contempt microexpressions, it often signals that the person feels they're better than or above whatever is being discussed. The key to reading microexpressions is training your eye to catch these fleeting moments. Most people look at faces in a general way, but effective microexpression reading requires focused attention on specific facial regions. The eyebrows, eyes, and mouth are the most expressive areas, but don't forget about the jaw, nostrils, and overall facial tension. Practice starts with slowing down and really looking at people's faces during conversations. When someone is speaking, watch their face for those brief moments where their true feelings might leak through. Pay particular attention to the microsecond before they start speaking, or immediately after they finish. These are often when microexpressions appear. One practical exercise is to watch movies or television with the sound off, focusing entirely on the actor's facial expressions. Try to identify the emotions being portrayed based solely on their faces. This trains your eye to pick up subtle facial cues that you might otherwise miss. Here's where microexpression reading becomes particularly valuable in real-world situations. In business negotiations, you might notice a brief flash of fear when you mention a particular term, indicating that it's a sensitive point. In job interviews, you might catch a microexpression of doubt when a candidate claims to have a particular skill, suggesting they might be overselling their abilities. In personal relationships, microexpressions can help you understand when someone is hurt, angry, or disappointed even when they're trying to hide it. This awareness allows you to address issues before they become bigger problems or to provide support when someone needs it, but isn't asking for it. However, it's crucial to understand the limitations of microexpression reading. A single microexpression doesn't tell you the whole story, it just gives you additional information to consider. Someone might flash an expression of anger, not because they're angry at you, but because they're remembering something frustrating that happened earlier. Context is always important. Also, remember that some people are naturally more expressive than others, and some have learned to control their facial expressions more effectively. Don't assume that someone who shows fewer microexpressions is being deceptive. They might simply be less emotionally expressive in general. The goal of developing microexpression reading skills isn't to become a human lie detector, or to manipulate others. It's to become more aware of the rich emotional information that people are constantly sharing, often without realizing it. This awareness allows you to respond more empathetically and effectively to others' emotional states. When you combine microexpression reading with other social intelligence skills, you develop a much more complete picture of what's really happening in your interactions. You might notice that someone's words are saying one thing, their body language is saying another, and their microexpressions are revealing a third layer of truth. Practice this skill gradually and ethically. Start by becoming more aware of your own facial expressions. You might be surprised by what you discover. Then begin noticing others' expressions with curiosity and compassion, rather than judgment. The goal is to understand and connect, not to gain advantage or prove that someone is lying. Remember that microexpressions are just one piece of the social intelligence puzzle. They provide valuable information, but they work best when combined with careful listening, cultural awareness, and a genuine desire to understand others. When you can read the stories that faces tell in half a second, you gain access to a deeper level of human connection and understanding. Chapter 6. Listening between the lines. Sarah's colleague Mark said, "I'm really excited about the new project direction." His words were positive and enthusiastic, but Sarah noticed something else. His voice lacked energy. He paused slightly before saying excited, and he avoided eye contact while speaking. Sarah realized that Mark wasn't actually excited at all. He was likely concerned, or even opposed to the new direction, but felt he couldn't express this directly. This is listening between the lines, the art of hearing not just what people say, but what they really mean. It's one of the most powerful skills in social intelligence because it allows you to understand the complete message someone is trying to communicate, including the parts they might not even be aware they're sharing. Most people think listening is about hearing words, but true listening is about understanding meaning, and meaning is communicated through much more than just the words themselves. It's conveyed through tone of voice, pacing, what's emphasized, what's omitted, and the emotional undertones that color every conversation. Think about how many times you've heard someone say, "I'm fine," when they clearly weren't fine. The words themselves carry one message, but the tone, timing, and context tell a completely different story. Learning to listen between the lines means developing the ability to hear these multiple layers of communication simultaneously. The first layer to pay attention to is vocal tone and quality. The human voice carries an enormous amount of emotional information. When someone is genuinely excited, their voice naturally becomes more animated, with greater variation in pitch and pace. When they're nervous or uncertain, their voice might become higher, faster, or more restricted. When they're sad or depressed, their voice often becomes flatter and more monotone. Listen for what I call vocal incongruence. Moments when the tone of voice doesn't match the content of the words. If someone says they're confident about a decision but their voice becomes tight or shaky, they're likely feeling more uncertain than they're willing to admit. If someone claims to be happy for you but their voice lacks warmth, they might be experiencing envy or disappointment. Pacing and rhythm provide another layer of meaning. People tend to speak faster when they're excited, nervous, or trying to convince someone of something. They slow down when they're being careful about their words, feeling uncertain, or emphasizing important points. Pay attention to sudden changes in pace. These often indicate emotional shifts or important information. Pauses are incredibly meaningful in communication. A slight hesitation before answering a question might indicate uncertainty, discomfort, or the need to carefully consider their response. Long pauses after you've made a statement might suggest they're processing difficult information or preparing to disagree. Comfortable pauses in conversation often indicate that someone is thinking deeply about what you said. What people don't say is often as important as what they do say. Listen for omissions, topics they avoid, details they skip over, or emotions they don't acknowledge. If someone is telling you about a difficult situation but never mentions how they feel about it, they might be avoiding their emotions or trying to appear stronger than they actually feel. Word choice reveals tremendous amounts of information about people's true thoughts and feelings. Someone who says, "I have to go to this meeting," communicates very different feelings than someone who says, "I get to attend this meeting." Pay attention to whether people use positive or negative language when describing their experiences, obligations, or relationships. The level of detail someone provides also carries meaning. When people are enthusiastic about something, they often provide rich details and examples. When they're uncomfortable or hiding something, they might be vague or give minimal information. However, be careful not to overinterpret. Some people are naturally more detailed in their communication style than others. Emotional undertones color every conversation, and learning to detect them is crucial for listening between the lines. Someone might be telling you about a success they achieved, but you can hear sadness underneath because they wish certain people had been there to share it. Someone might be describing a logical decision, but you can detect anxiety because they're worried about the consequences. Here's a practical technique I call emotional echoing. As you listen to someone speak, try to identify the emotion behind their words, not just the content, then reflect that emotion back to them. For example, if someone says, "I'm handling the situation fine," but you hear stress in their voice, you might say, "It sounds like you're managing a lot right now." This shows that you're hearing the complete message, not just the surface level. Active listening is about more than just paying attention. It's about creating space for people to express themselves fully. This means resisting the urge to immediately respond, give advice, or share your own experiences. Instead, focus on understanding what they're really trying to communicate, including the parts they might be struggling to express. Use clarifying questions to help people explore their own feelings and thoughts. Instead of assuming you know what someone means, ask questions like, "What was that like for you?" Or, "How are you feeling about all of this?" These questions invite people to go deeper and often reveal information they weren't planning to share. Pay attention to body language while listening. Someone's posture, gestures, and facial expressions provide additional context for their words. If someone says they're comfortable with a decision but their body language suggests tension or uncertainty, there's likely more to the story. Notice patterns in how people communicate. Some people habitually minimize their problems, always saying everything is fine even when it isn't. Others tend to dramatize situations, using intense language for relatively minor issues. Understanding these patterns helps you calibrate your listening and respond more appropriately. The timing of what people say matters tremendously. Information shared early in a conversation often represents what's most important to them. Details added at the end might be what they're most uncertain about, or concerned about your reaction to. Pay attention to when people bring up sensitive topics. It often indicates their emotional state or comfort level. One of the most powerful aspects of listening between the lines is recognizing when someone is asking for help. Without directly asking, they might describe a problem they're having, mention feeling overwhelmed, or express uncertainty about a decision. These are often indirect requests for support, advice, or simply someone to listen and understand. Cultural differences significantly impact how people communicate meaning. In some cultures, direct communication is valued and expected. In others, important information is communicated indirectly through context, tone, and what's left unsaid. Understanding these differences helps you listen more effectively across cultural boundaries. Here's an advanced technique. Listen for what I call emotional themes that run through someone's communication. Even if they're talking about different topics, there might be consistent emotional undertones: frustration, excitement, anxiety, or hope. These themes often reveal what's really on someone's mind or heart. Practice listening without preparing your response. Most people spend conversation time thinking about what they want to say next, rather than fully focusing on what's being said. This divided attention prevents you from catching the subtle cues that reveal deeper meaning. Remember that listening between the lines requires empathy and emotional intelligence. You're not just decoding messages, you're connecting with another human being's experience. The goal isn't to become a mind reader, but to become someone who truly understands and responds to others' complete communication. When you master the art of listening between the lines, your relationships transform. People feel more understood, more heard, and more connected to you. They're more likely to share important information, trust you with their concerns, and value your perspective. You become someone who truly gets it, not just the words, but the whole story. Chapter 7. The Social Map. Understanding Context and Culture. Picture this. You're in a business meeting, and your colleague from Japan seems quiet and reserved. You might interpret this as disengagement or lack of interest, but what you're actually seeing is someone following their cultural norms of showing respect through attentive listening and not interrupting others. Meanwhile, your American colleagues' direct questions and quick responses aren't rudeness. They're showing engagement in the way their culture values. The same meeting, same topics, completely different social maps. Every social interaction takes place within a complex web of contextual factors that shape how people behave, communicate, and interpret others' actions. Understanding these invisible forces, what I call the social map, is crucial for developing true social intelligence. Without this awareness, you'll constantly misread situations and people, no matter how skilled you become at reading individual cues. The social map consists of multiple layers that all operate simultaneously. There's the immediate physical context where you are, who else is present, what the stated purpose of the interaction is. There's the cultural context, the shared norms, values, and expectations that shape behavior. There's the hierarchical context, the power dynamics and status relationships in play. And there's the temporal context, the timing, recent events, and future implications that color the interaction. Let's start with physical context because it's the most obvious but often overlooked. The same person will behave very differently in a corporate boardroom versus a coffee shop, at a wedding versus a funeral, or in a small intimate gathering versus a large public event. The environment doesn't just influence behavior, it actively shapes what's considered appropriate, expected, and effective. Consider how your own behavior changes based on where you are. You probably speak differently in a library than you do at a sports event. You maintain different posture in a job interview than you do at a family barbecue. You use different humor, different vocabulary, and different levels of formality. This isn't being fake, it's being socially intelligent and contextually appropriate. Cultural context adds another layer of complexity. Culture operates at multiple levels: national culture, regional culture, organizational culture, and even family culture. Each of these creates different expectations about communication styles, relationship dynamics, time orientation, and social hierarchies. What's considered polite in one culture might be seen as weak in another. What's viewed as confident in one context might be perceived as arrogant in another. Understanding cultural context isn't about memorizing lists of cultural do's and don'ts. It's about developing cultural sensitivity, the ability to recognize that different people operate from different cultural frameworks and to adjust your interpretation and behavior accordingly. This requires curiosity about others' backgrounds and a willingness to suspend judgment when behavior doesn't match your cultural expectations. Hierarchical context refers to the power dynamics and status relationships that exist in every social situation. Every group has informal hierarchies based on factors like expertise, seniority, social status, or personal charisma. These hierarchies shape who speaks first, who gets listened to, how decisions are made, and what kinds of behavior are acceptable from different people. Being aware of hierarchical context helps you navigate social situations more effectively. You might notice that junior team members wait for senior members to speak first, or that certain people's opinions carry more weight regardless of their formal title. Understanding these dynamics allows you to position yourself appropriately and communicate in ways that are more likely to be heard and respected. Temporal context involves the timing and sequence of events that frame an interaction. What happened just before this conversation? What's coming up next? What recent events are on people's minds? How much time is available for this interaction? All of these factors influence how people behave and how they interpret your behavior. For example, if you're having a conversation with someone right after they've received bad news, they might seem distant or distracted. This has nothing to do with you or your conversation, it's the temporal context affecting their ability to engage. Similarly, if you're trying to have a serious conversation with someone who's rushing to another meeting, the timing context makes it unlikely that you'll have their full attention. Reading the social map requires constant observation and calibration. When you enter any social situation, take a moment to assess the context. What kind of environment is this? What cultural norms seem to be operating? Who are the key players? And what are their relationships to each other? What's the stated and unstated purpose of this interaction? Pay attention to contextual cues that others might miss. Notice who sits where, who speaks first, how people address each other, what topics are brought up or avoided. These details reveal the invisible rules and hierarchies that govern the situation. The more accurately you can read these contextual factors, the more effectively you can navigate the social dynamics. One powerful technique is what I call contextual mirroring. This involves adjusting your behavior to match the context rather than imposing your preferred style on every situation. In a formal business setting, you might adopt more professional language and posture. In a casual social gathering, you might be more relaxed and playful. This isn't being inauthentic, it's being contextually intelligent. Different contexts also require different types of social intelligence. Leading a team meeting, requires different skills than comforting a friend, which requires different skills than networking at a conference. The key is recognizing what type of social intelligence is needed in each situation and adjusting your approach accordingly. Be aware of context shifts within single interactions. A casual conversation might suddenly become more serious, or a formal meeting might become more relaxed. These shifts often happen gradually, and being able to recognize and adapt to them is a mark of social sophistication. Cultural context becomes particularly important in our increasingly diverse world. You might find yourself interacting with people from different countries, generations, industries, or social backgrounds within a single day. Each brings their own cultural framework and expectation. The more you can recognize and respect these differences, the more effective your interactions will be. Remember that you're also part of the contextual equation. Your presence, energy, and behavior contribute to the social map that others are reading. Being aware of your contextual impact helps you be more intentional about the kind of environment you create and contribute to. One common mistake is assuming that your cultural context is universal. What feels natural and appropriate to you, based on your background, might be completely foreign to someone else. Developing contextual awareness means recognizing that your way of doing things is just one approach among many, not necessarily the right or best approach. Context also includes unspoken rules and expectations that might not be immediately obvious. Every workplace, family, and social group has its own informal rules about humor, conflict, authority, and relationships. Learning to read these unspoken rules is crucial for fitting in and being effective. The social map is constantly shifting, contexts change, relationships evolve, and new situations create new dynamics. Staying socially intelligent means continuously updating your understanding of the contextual factors that shape each interaction. This requires flexibility, curiosity, and a willingness to adapt your approach as you gather new information. When you master the art of reading the social map, you become someone who can navigate any social situation with grace and effectiveness. You understand not just what people are doing, but why they're doing it. You can adjust your behavior to be appropriate and effective in different contexts, and you can help others navigate social situations by understanding and working with the contextual forces at play. Chapter 8. Calibrating to the room. Have you ever walked into a meeting and immediately sensed the energy was off? Maybe the room felt tense, or unusually quiet, or charged with an emotion you couldn't quite identify. Your first instinct might have been to maintain your planned approach. After all, you came prepared with specific goals and strategies. But here's what socially intelligent people do differently. They calibrate to the room. Calibration is the art of reading the collective energy, mood, and dynamics of a group or situation, and adjusting your approach accordingly. It's about being flexible enough to adapt your energy, communication style, and behavior to match what the situation actually requires, rather than stubbornly sticking to what you originally planned. Think of calibration like being a skilled DJ. A good DJ doesn't just play their favorite songs, they read the crowd, sense the energy, and adjust their music selection to match and guide the mood of the room. Similarly, socially intelligent people constantly adjust their approach based on the social and emotional temperature of their environment. The ability to calibrate begins with developing acute sensitivity to group energy. Every collection of people creates a unique energetic signature based on their individual moods, the relationships between them, the context of their gathering, and the undercurrents of emotion flowing through the group. This energy is real and measurable. You can feel it the moment you walk into a room. Group energy manifests in observable ways. You might notice that people are sitting closer together or farther apart than usual. Their voices might be quieter or more animated. Eye contact patterns might be different, perhaps more intense or more avoidant. The pace of conversation might be faster or slower than normal. These are all clues about the emotional state of the group. The key to effective calibration is first accepting that your original plan might not be appropriate for the actual situation you encounter. Many people become so attached to their prepared approach that they miss obvious signals that a different strategy would be more effective. Flexibility is a strength, not a weakness. Let me give you a practical example. Imagine you're about to present a new marketing strategy to your team. You've prepared an energetic, enthusiasm-filled presentation designed to get everyone excited about the possibilities. But when you walk into the room, you notice that the team seems subdued, maybe even worried. Perhaps they've just heard about budget cuts, or a competitor has made a major move, or there's been a recent setback on another project. A socially intelligent person would recognize that launching into high-energy excitement would be tone-deaf and ineffective. Instead, They might begin by acknowledging the mood in the room. I can sense that everyone's feeling a bit concerned about recent developments. Let's talk about how this strategy might address some of those concerns. This shows that you're aware of the group's emotional state and are willing to meet them where they are. Calibration works on multiple levels simultaneously. There's emotional calibration, matching the appropriate emotional tone for the situation. There's energy calibration, adjusting your enthusiasm and intensity to fit the room's energy level. There's communication calibration, adapting your language, examples and approach to resonate with your specific audience. And there's behavioral calibration, adjusting your body language, gestures and presence to fit the social dynamics. Emotional calibration requires reading the dominant emotions in the room and responding appropriately. If the group is anxious, you might need to be more reassuring and calm. If they're frustrated, you might need to acknowledge their frustration before trying to move towards solution. If they're grieving a loss or setback, you might need to be more subdued and supportive. Energy calibration involves matching your intensity level to what the situation calls for. Sometimes you need to bring energy to a sluggish group, and sometimes you need to dial down your intensity to match a more serious or contemplative mood. The goal isn't to always match the room's energy exactly, but to be conscious of the gap and adjust accordingly. Communication calibration means adapting your message, language, and examples to fit your specific audience. The same core message might need to be delivered very differently to a group of executives versus a group of frontline employees, or to a team that's celebrating success versus one that's dealing with failure. Behavioral calibration involves adjusting your physical presence, gestures, and social positioning to fit the group dynamics. In a highly formal setting, you might need to be more controlled and measured in your movements. In a creative brainstorming session, you might need to be more animated and expressive. Here's a crucial point. Calibration doesn't mean being fake or losing your authenticity. It means being authentically responsive to the situation you're actually in, rather than the situation you planned for. You're still being yourself, you're just emphasizing different aspects of your personality and skills based on what's needed. One of the most important aspects of calibration is timing. The same approach that would be perfect at one moment might be completely inappropriate 5 minutes later. Groups are dynamic, and their energy and needs change throughout an interaction. Effective calibration requires ongoing attention and adjustment. Watch for calibration opportunities throughout any interaction. These might include moments when the energy shifts, when someone introduces new information, when conflict arises, or when the group seems to reach a decision point. Each of these moments might require a different approach than what you were using before. Practice what I call micro-calibrations. Small adjustments you make throughout an interaction based on the feedback you're receiving. If you notice people looking confused, you might slow down and provide more explanation. If you sense impatience, you might pick up the pace or get to the point more quickly. If you notice engagement dropping, you might ask a question or change your approach. Group size significantly affects calibration needs. What works in a one-on-one conversation might not work in a small group, and what works in a small group might not work in a large audience. Larger groups often require more formal, structured approaches, while smaller groups might allow for more intimate conversational styles. Cultural factors also influence calibration needs. Different cultures have different norms around appropriate energy levels, communication styles, and social interaction patterns. What feels appropriately enthusiastic in one culture might seem over the top in another. What feels respectfully reserved in one context might seem disengaged in another. Here's a practical exercise to develop your calibration skills. Before entering any social situation, take a moment to set your intention to be responsive to what you encounter rather than attached to your predetermined approach. Then when you enter the room, spend the first few minutes observing before jumping into action. What do you notice about the energy, mood, and dynamics? How might you need to adjust your approach? Calibration also involves recognizing when you're having a positive or negative effect on the group energy, and adjusting accordingly. If your approach is energizing the group in a positive way, you might continue or even amplify it. If you're creating tension or reducing engagement, you need to be flexible enough to try a different approach. One advanced calibration skill is learning to gradually shift the group's energy in a positive direction. This isn't about manipulation. It's about using your influence to help the group move toward a more productive or positive state. You might start by matching their current energy level, and then gradually modeling a slightly more positive or energetic approach. Remember that calibration is an ongoing process. not a one-time adjustment. Groups are dynamic, and their needs change throughout an interaction. The most socially intelligent people are constantly making small adjustments based on the feedback they're receiving from the group. When you master the art of calibration, you become someone who can walk into any room and quickly establish rapport and effectiveness. You're not thrown off by unexpected moods or dynamics. You're able to adapt and respond appropriately. This flexibility makes you more influential, more likable, and more effective in virtually any social situation. Chapter 9. From awkward to attuned. Building rapport instantly. We've all been there, that uncomfortable moment when you meet someone new and the conversation feels forced, stilted, or just plain awkward. You're searching for something to say, they seem distant or disinterested, and you're left wondering why some people seem to effortlessly connect with others while you struggle to find common ground. The good news is that building rapport isn't a mysterious talent that some people have and others don't. It's a learnable skill with specific techniques you can master. Rapport is that magical feeling of connection, understanding, and mutual comfort that develops between people. When you have rapport with someone, conversation flows easily, you feel understood, and there's a sense of being in sync with each other. It's the foundation of all meaningful relationships, whether personal or professional. The mistake most people make is thinking that rapport is about finding things in common or being likable. While these factors can help, true rapport is actually about creating a sense of safety, understanding, and mutual respect. It's about making the other person feel seen, heard, and valued as an individual. Rapport begins the moment you encounter someone, often before any words are exchanged. Your body language, facial expression, and energy all communicate messages about your openness, interest, and intentions. Someone who approaches others with genuine curiosity and positive regard will naturally create more rapport than someone who seems distracted, judgmental, or self-focused. The foundation of instant rapport is what I call generous attention. This means giving someone your full present moment awareness, without agenda or judgment. Most people are so focused on what they're going to say next or how they're coming across that they're not really present with the other person. Generous attention is different. It's about being genuinely interested in who this person is and what they have to say. Eye contact plays a crucial role in building rapport, but it's not just about looking at someone. It's about the quality of your attention. When you look at someone with genuine interest and warmth, they feel it. When you look at them while thinking about something else, they feel that too. Practice giving what I call soft focus, maintaining eye contact that's attentive but not intense, interested but not staring. Mirroring is one of the most powerful rapport-building techniques, but it needs to be done subtly and naturally. People unconsciously mirror the behavior of those they feel connected to. It's a natural human tendency. You can use this knowledge by gently matching the other person's energy level, speaking pace, and even some of their body language. The key is to do this gradually and naturally, not like you're mimicking them. Voice matching is particularly effective for building rapport. If someone speaks softly, you might lower your voice slightly. If they speak with energy and enthusiasm, you might match some of that energy. If they speak slowly and thoughtfully, you might slow down your pace. This isn't about copying them exactly. It's about finding a complementary communication style that feels comfortable to both of you. Active listening is essential for rapport building, but it goes beyond just hearing what someone says. It's about listening for the emotions, values, and experiences behind their words. When someone feels truly heard and understood, rapport develops naturally. This means asking thoughtful questions, making encouraging responses, and reflecting back what you're hearing to show that you understand. Finding genuine connection points is more nuanced than just looking for shared interests. It's about finding shared experiences, values, or perspectives that create a sense of understanding. Maybe you both have experience with career transitions, or you both value creativity, or you both have dealt with similar challenges. These deeper connection points are more meaningful than surface-level similarities. Emotional attunement is perhaps the most important aspect of rapport building. This means being sensitive to the other person's emotional state and responding appropriately. If someone seems excited, you might share in their enthusiasm. If they seem concerned, you might offer understanding and support. If they seem tired, you might adjust your energy to be more calming and supportive. Authenticity is crucial for sustainable rapport. While you can use techniques to build connection, you can't fake genuine interest and care. People have highly developed radar for detecting insincerity, and attempting to build rapport through manipulation or fake interest will ultimately backfire. The goal is to become genuinely interested in others, and to develop your natural ability to connect. Timing matters enormously. In rapport building, there are natural rhythms to conversations, and pushing too hard or too fast can actually damage rapport. Sometimes the best thing you can do is simply be present and allow connection to develop naturally. Other times you might need to take gentle initiative to guide the conversation toward deeper connection. Cultural sensitivity is essential for building rapport across diverse groups. What feels like appropriate rapport-building behavior in one culture might be seen as too familiar or invasive in another. Pay attention to cultural cues and adjust your approach accordingly. This might mean being more formal initially, respecting different concepts of personal space, or understanding different communication styles. One powerful technique is what I call validation acknowledgement. This involves recognizing and affirming the other person's perspective, feelings, or experiences without necessarily agreeing with everything they say. You might say something like, "That sounds like it was really challenging," or "I can understand why you'd feel that way." This shows that you're listening and that you respect their experience. Sharing vulnerabilities appropriately can accelerate rapport building. This doesn't mean oversharing or dumping your problems on someone you've just met. It means being willing to share something real about yourself that creates a sense of mutual humanity. This might be acknowledging a mistake you made, sharing a lesson you learned, or expressing genuine emotion about something meaningful to you. Questions are powerful rapport-building tools when used skillfully. Instead of asking generic questions like, "What do you do?" try asking questions that invite someone to share their passions, interests, or perspectives. Questions like, "What's been inspiring you lately?" or "What's the most interesting thing you've learned recently?" tend to generate more engaging conversations. Pay attention to what energizes the other person. People light up when they talk about things they care about. When you notice this happening, lean into those topics, ask follow-up questions, show genuine interest, and allow them to share their enthusiasm. This creates positive feelings that become associated with you and your interaction. Remember that rapport building is not about winning people over or getting them to like you. It's about creating genuine human connection based on mutual respect and understanding. When your motivation is authentic connection rather than personal gain, people sense this and respond more positively. Common rapport building mistakes include trying too hard, being too eager to share your own stories, making assumptions about what someone wants to talk about, or attempting to use techniques in a mechanical way. The most effective rapport building feels natural and effortless because it's based on genuine interest and care. Practice these skills gradually and consistently. Start with low-stakes interactions, perhaps with service workers, neighbors, or acquaintances. As you develop your rapport-building abilities, you'll find that connecting with others becomes easier and more natural. You'll discover that most people are actually quite open to connection when approached with genuine interest and respect. The transformation from awkward to attuned happens when you stop focusing on yourself and start focusing on creating a positive experience for the other person. When you approach interactions with curiosity, warmth, and genuine interest, rapport often builds naturally. You become someone others enjoy being around because you make them feel valued and understood. Chapter 10: Empathy versus Sympathy. Knowing the difference. "I totally understand what you're going through," Maria said to her friend James, who had just shared his struggles with depression. "I went through something similar last year, and what really helped me was—" James nodded politely, but Maria could see him withdrawing. Despite her good intentions, she had just demonstrated sympathy, not empathy, and the difference matters more than most people realize. This scenario plays out thousands of times every day, with well-meaning people trying to help by sharing their own experiences or offering solutions. But here's what they don't understand. When someone is in emotional pain, what they most need is not someone to fix their problem or relate it to their own experience. They need someone to truly understand and validate their unique experience. They need empathy. The difference between empathy and sympathy isn't just semantic, it's transformational. Sympathy is feeling sorry for someone or feeling bad about their situation. It's observing their pain from the outside and responding with compassion. Empathy is actually feeling with someone, temporarily stepping into their emotional world and experiencing their feelings as if they were your own. Sympathy says, "I feel bad for you." Empathy says, "I feel with you." This distinction makes all the difference in how connected and understood people feel when they're struggling. Sympathy, while well-intentioned, often creates distance because it positions you as the helper and them as the one who needs help. Empathy creates connection because it acknowledges the shared humanity in the experience. Here's why this matters so much. When people are going through difficult times, they often feel isolated and alone in their experience. They may feel like no one understands what they're going through, or that their feelings are too big or too complicated for others to handle. What they need most is to feel seen, heard, and understood, not fixed or given advice. Real empathy requires what researcher Brené Brown calls perspective taking, the ability to see the world through someone else's eyes and feel what they're feeling. This isn't about agreeing with their perspective or thinking they're handling things perfectly. It's about understanding their experience from their point of view and responding to the emotions they're experiencing. The challenge with empathy is that it requires you to be comfortable with difficult emotions, both yours and others. When someone is in pain, the natural impulse is often to try to make it better quickly, to offer solutions, or to share your own story to show you understand. But true empathy means sitting with their pain without trying to fix it or minimize it. Let me give you a practical example. If your friend tells you they're devastated about not getting a job they really wanted, sympathy might sound like, "I'm sorry that happened. Don't worry, something better will come along. When I didn't get that job at XYZ company, I ended up finding something even better." This response, while caring, essentially dismisses their current feelings and redirects the conversation to your experience. Empathy, on the other hand, might sound like, "This must be so disappointing. You really wanted this job, and it sounds like you're feeling pretty crushed right now." This response validates their feelings and stays with their experience rather than trying to fix it or shift focus. The key to empathy is learning to tolerate emotional discomfort, both your own and others. When someone is hurting, you might feel uncomfortable with their pain and want to make it go away quickly, but rushing to solutions or trying to cheer them up often prevents the deeper healing that comes from feeling truly understood. Empathy also requires what I call emotional regulation. This means being able to feel with someone without being overwhelmed by their emotions. You want to be present and connected to their experience without losing yourself in it. This is different from emotional numbness. You're still feeling, but you're maintaining enough emotional stability to be helpful. One common mistake is confusing empathy with emotional contagion. Emotional contagion is when you automatically absorb someone else's emotions to the point where you become as upset as they are. While this might seem like empathy, it's actually not helpful, because now there are two people who are overwhelmed rather than one person who feels supported. True empathy involves what psychologists call self-other differentiation, the ability to distinguish between your emotions and theirs, while still connecting with their experience. You can feel their pain without making it your own. You can understand their perspective without losing sight of your own. Here's a practical framework for responding empathetically. First, listen without immediately jumping to solutions or sharing your own experience. Really hear what they're saying and feeling. Second, reflect back what you're hearing to show that you understand. Third, validate their feelings without trying to change them. Fourth, ask if there's anything specific they need from you. Empathy also involves understanding that people's emotional experiences are valid, even if you wouldn't feel the same way in their situation. You don't have to agree with their perspective or think their response is proportional to understand that their feelings are real and important to them. The language of empathy is different from the language of sympathy. Empathetic responses often begin with phrases like, "It sounds like," or "I can imagine that," or "That must be." These phrases acknowledge the other person's experience, without claiming to have had the same experience yourself. Avoid empathy blockers like immediately offering advice, trying to find the silver lining, sharing your own story, or minimizing their feeling. These responses, while often well-intentioned, shut down emotional connection and make people feel less understood, not more. Body language matters enormously in empathetic responses. Leaning in slightly, maintaining appropriate eye contact, and having an open posture all communicate that you're present and engaged with their experience. Avoid looking at your phone, checking the time, or other behaviors that suggest you're eager to move on. Sometimes the most empathetic response is simply presence. You don't always need to say something profound or helpful. Sometimes, just being there, listening, and acknowledging their experience is exactly what someone needs to feel less alone. Cultural factors influence how empathy is expressed and received. In some cultures, direct emotional expression is valued, while in others, more subtle forms of support are preferred. Pay attention to cultural cues and adjust your empathetic responses accordingly. Empathy is not about fixing people or making their problems go away. It's about creating a sense of connection and understanding that helps people feel less alone in their struggles. This connection often provides the emotional support they need to find their own solutions or simply to cope with difficult experiences. The paradox of empathy is that when you stop trying to fix or change someone's emotional experience, and instead focus on understanding it, you often create the conditions for healing and growth. People who feel truly understood are more likely to work through their emotions effectively and make positive changes in their lives. Developing empathy is a lifelong practice that requires ongoing attention and cultivation. It means becoming more comfortable with emotional complexity, more skilled at emotional regulation, and more committed to understanding others' experiences rather than immediately trying to fix them. When you master the difference between empathy and sympathy, your relationships deepen dramatically. People feel safer sharing their struggles with you because they know you won't immediately try to fix them or minimize their experience. They trust you with their emotions because you've demonstrated that you can handle them with care and understanding. Chapter 11: Navigating Difficult Conversations with Grace. You're sitting across from someone and you can feel the tension building. Maybe it's your boss questioning your decision, your partner bringing up that same old issue, or a friend challenging something you said. Your heart rate quickens, your jaw tightens, and every instinct screams at you to defend, deflect, or just get out of there. Sound familiar? You're not alone. Most of us have been conditioned to see difficult conversations as battles to be won rather than bridges to be built. We approach them with armor instead of curiosity, weapons instead of wisdom. And that's exactly why these conversations so often leave us feeling drained, misunderstood, and further apart than when we started. What if I told you that the most socially intelligent people don't just survive difficult conversations, they transform them? They walk into conflict with the same calm confidence they'd bring to a friendly chat. They somehow manage to stay connected to others, even when discussing the most challenging topics. They don't just navigate these conversations, they elevate them. The difference isn't that they're naturally gifted debaters or that they avoid conflict altogether. The difference is that they understand something most people miss. Difficult conversations aren't about winning or losing. They're about understanding and being understood. They're about finding connection in the midst of disconnection. The real challenge in difficult conversations. Here's what happens in most difficult conversations. The moment we sense conflict, our brain's alarm system goes off. The amygdala hijacks our rational thinking, flooding our system with stress hormones. We shift from seeking to understand to seeking to survive. We stop listening and start defending. We stop being curious and start being certain. This is why you can be the most reasonable person in the world. But the moment someone criticizes your work or challenges your opinion, you find yourself saying things you don't mean, making arguments you don't believe, or shutting down completely. Your brain has switched from connection mode to protection mode. The socially intelligent person has learned to recognize this shift before it happens. They've developed what I call conflict consciousness, the ability to notice when their nervous system is activating and to consciously choose a different response. They understand that staying calm isn't about suppressing emotions, it's about staying present with them. The grace mindset, reframing difficult conversations. Grace in difficult conversations begins with a fundamental reframe. Instead of seeing conflict as a threat, you learn to see it as information. Instead of viewing the other person as an opponent, you see them as someone with a different perspective that might actually be valuable. This doesn't mean becoming passive or agreeing with everything. It means approaching the conversation with genuine curiosity about what the other person is experiencing. It means being willing to discover that you might be wrong, or that the truth might be more complex than either of you initially realized. Think of it like this. Imagine you're exploring a cave with someone, and you come to a fork in the path. You think you should go left, they think you should go right. The goal isn't to prove your path is better. It's to understand what each of you is seeing that the other might be missing. Maybe your path avoids a dangerous drop-off they can't see from their angle. Maybe their path leads to fresh air you can't smell from where you're standing. A grace framework for difficult conversations. Let me give you a practical framework that spells out exactly how to handle these situations. I call it grace. Dre. Ground yourself before you say anything. Take a breath. Notice what's happening in your body. Are your shoulders tense? Is your breathing shallow? Are you gripping your coffee cup a little too tightly? These physical sensations are your early warning system. They're telling you that your nervous system is ramping up for conflict. Don't try to suppress these sensations, acknowledge them. Mentally say to yourself, I notice I'm feeling defensive right now, or I can feel my anger rising. This simple act of naming what you're experiencing creates space between you and your automatic reactions. Remember your intention in the heat of the moment. It's easy to lose sight of why you're having this conversation in the first place. Are you trying to solve a problem? Repair a relationship? Understand someone's concerns? Or are you just trying to prove you're right? Get clear on your deepest intention. Usually it's some version of I want to understand and be understood, or I want to find a solution that works for both of us. Hold on to this intention like an anchor. When you feel yourself getting pulled into reactive patterns, come back to it. Acknowledge what you're hearing. One of the most powerful tools in difficult conversations is the simple act of acknowledgement. This doesn't mean agreeing with everything the other person says. It means demonstrating that you've actually heard them. Try phrases like, what I'm hearing is that you're frustrated because, or it sounds like you're concerned about, or help me understand, are you saying that? This does two things. It slows down the conversation and gives the other person the experience of being heard, which is often what they want most. When people feel heard, they're much more likely to hear you in return. Communicate your perspective clearly when it's your turn to speak. Avoid the temptation to build a case or make an argument. Instead, share your experience. Talk about what you observed, what you felt, and what you need. Use I statements. I experienced it differently, or I'm concerned about, or I need. This isn't just politically correct communication, it's strategically intelligent. When you speak from your own experience, you're not making the other person wrong, you're simply offering a different perspective. Explore solutions together. The goal of a difficult conversation isn't to establish who's right and who's wrong, it's to find a path forward that honors both perspectives. This means shifting from adversarial thinking to collaborative thinking. Ask questions like, what would need to happen for both of us to feel good about this? Or, what are some options we haven't considered? Or, what's most important to you in solving this? Staying connected during conflict. Here's something most people don't realize. You can kai with someone completely and still maintain connection with them. The key is to separate the person from the position. You can challenge someone's ideas while still respecting their humanity. Watch for moments when you start to make the other person wrong or bad. Notice when you begin to question their character, their motives, or their intelligence. These are signs that you've shifted from addressing the issue to attacking the person. Instead, try to stay curious about their experience. What is it like to be them in this situation? What are they afraid of? What do they need? What past experiences might be influencing their perspective? This doesn't mean you have to agree with them or give in to their demands. It means you can hold space for their humanity, while still advocating for what you believe is right. The power of pause. One of the most underutilized tools in difficult conversations is the pause. When someone says something that triggers you, your instinct is to respond immediately, but that immediate response is almost always reactive, rather than responsive. Learn to pause. Take a breath. Let their words sink in before you react. This gives you time to access your higher thinking rather than just your emotional reactions. You can even say, let me think about that for a moment, or that's interesting, I need a second to process that. People respect thoughtfulness, and giving yourself time to respond rather than react almost always leads to better outcomes. When emotions run high, sometimes, despite your best efforts, emotions will escalate. Someone might raise their voice, start crying, or become visibly angry. In these moments, your natural instinct might be to match their energy, or to try to calm them down. Neither approach works well. Instead, become a stabilizing presence. Lower your voice, slow down your speech, and maintain steady eye contact. Don't take on their emotional state, but don't dismiss it either. You might say something like, I can see this is really important to you, or I want to understand what you're experiencing right now. Sometimes people need to be emotionally heard before they can hear anything else. The art of the reset. Not every difficult conversation will go smoothly, even with the best intentions and skills. Sometimes you'll find yourself in a spiral of misunderstanding, defensiveness, and hurt feelings. When this happens, you need to know how to reset. A reset might sound like, I feel like we're not hearing each other right now. Can we take a step back? Or, I care about our relationship. and I want to have this conversation in a way that brings us closer together. Can we try a different approach? The key is to address the process, not just the content. Acknowledge that the conversation isn't working, and suggest a different way forward. This takes courage, but it's often what's needed to transform a destructive conversation into a constructive one. Building your conflict confidence. Like any skill, navigating difficult conversations with grace gets easier with practice. Start with lower stakes conversations. Practice the grace framework when someone disagrees with your restaurant choice or questions your movie recommendation. Notice your patterns. Do you tend to shut down, get defensive, or go on the attack? Do you avoid difficult conversations altogether, or do you escalate them unnecessarily? Awareness of your patterns is the first step to changing them. Remember, the goal isn't to become someone who never feels challenged or uncomfortable in difficult conversations. The goal is to become someone who can stay present, curious, and connected, even when things get tough. When you master this skill, you'll find that difficult conversations become opportunities for deeper understanding, stronger relationships, and creative solutions. You'll discover that conflict handled with grace can actually bring people closer together rather than drive them apart. The most socially intelligent people understand that how you handle difficult conversations says more about your character than how you handle easy ones. They approach conflict not as something to be avoided, but as something to be navigated with wisdom, compassion, and grace. Chapter 12. The Social Mind. Theory of Mind and Mentalizing. Right now, as you're listening to these words, something remarkable is happening in your brain. You're not just hearing sounds. You're constructing an understanding of what I'm thinking, what I intend to communicate, and what I might be feeling as I share these ideas with you. You're essentially reading my mind, and you're doing it without even trying. This ability to understand that other people have thoughts, feelings, beliefs, and intentions that are different from your own is called theory of mind. It's the foundation of all social intelligence, the cornerstone of empathy, and the secret to truly connecting with others. Yet most of us take it completely for granted. But here's what's fascinating. While we all have this ability, some people are much better at it than others. They seem to have an uncanny knack for knowing what others are thinking and feeling. They can walk into a room and immediately sense the emotional undercurrents. They know when someone is holding back, when someone is excited but trying to hide it, or when someone is saying yes but thinking no. This isn't magic or mystical intuition. It's a highly developed skill that you can strengthen. It's about learning to read the subtle signals that people constantly broadcast about their internal states. And it's about understanding the predictable patterns of human thinking and feeling. What is theory of mind really? Theory of mind is your ability to understand that other people have mental states, thoughts, beliefs, desires, emotions that are different from your own. It's what allows you to predict how someone will react, to understand why they behaved a certain way, and to adapt your own behavior accordingly. Most of us develop basic theory of mind as children, usually around age 4 or 5. This is when kids start to understand that other people can have false beliefs, that someone might think something that isn't true, or that different people can have different perspectives on the same situation. But basic theory of mind is just the beginning. The most socially intelligent people have developed what researchers call advanced theory of mind, the ability to understand complex mental states, to track multiple perspectives simultaneously, and to predict how those mental states will change over time. Think about it this way. Basic theory of mind is like having a black and white TV. You can see the picture, you understand what's happening, but you're missing layers of information. Advanced theory of mind is like having a high-definition color TV with surround sound. You're not just seeing what's happening, you're experiencing the full richness of human mental life. The mentalizing network in your brain. Neuroscientists have discovered that when we think about what others are thinking, a specific network of brain regions lights up. They call this the mentalizing network, and it includes areas involved in understanding intentions, predicting behavior, and imagining different perspectives. What's remarkable is that this network can be strengthened through practice. Just like going to the gym builds your physical muscles, deliberately practicing perspective taking builds your mentalizing muscles. The more you consciously try to understand what others are thinking and feeling, the better you get at it. But here's where most people go wrong. They try to read other people's minds by projecting their own thoughts and feelings onto them. They assume that others think and feel the same way they do. This is called the curse of knowledge, or mind-reading bias, and it's one of the biggest obstacles to accurate mentalizing. The art of accurate mind-reading. Real mentalizing isn't about making assumptions, it's about making educated guesses based on observable evidence. It's about becoming a detective of human behavior, noticing patterns, and understanding the underlying logic of how people think and feel. Here's how to develop this skill. Pay attention to incongruence. One of the most powerful indicators of someone's true mental state is the mismatch between what they're saying and what they're showing. Words are easy to control. Body language, tone of voice, and micro-expressions are much harder to fake. Watch for someone who says they're fine, but has tense shoulders, someone who claims to be interested but keeps checking their phone, or someone who agrees with you but has a slight frown. These incongruences are windows into their real thoughts and feelings. Notice energy shifts. People's energy changes when their mental state changes. Someone who was animated and engaged might suddenly become quiet and withdrawn. Someone who was relaxed might become fidgety and restless. These energy shifts often happen before the person is even consciously aware of what they're thinking or feeling. Become sensitive to these subtle changes. When someone's energy shifts, ask yourself, what just happened? What did I say or do? What are they thinking about now? That's different from what they were thinking about a moment ago. Track patterns over time. The most accurate mentalizing happens when you understand someone's patterns. How do they typically behave when they're excited? When they're worried? When they're trying to be polite, but aren't really interested? Everyone has their own emotional signature, their own way of expressing different mental states. The better you know someone, the more accurately you can read their mental states. But even with strangers, you can start to pick up on patterns within a single conversation. Understanding the layers of mental states. Human mental states are complex and multi-layered. At any given moment, someone might be thinking about multiple things, feeling conflicted emotions, or trying to manage competing desires. The most socially intelligent people understand this complexity, and don't try to oversimplify what others are experiencing. Surface layer. What they're saying, this is the most obvious layer. The words coming out of someone's mouth. But remember, this is often the most controlled and least reliable indicator of what someone is really thinking or feeling. Emotional layer. What they're feeling underneath the words are emotions. Someone might be saying they're excited about a project while feeling anxious about their ability to complete it. They might be agreeing with you while feeling frustrated that you're not understanding their perspective. Cognitive layer. What they're thinking even deeper are the thoughts and beliefs that drive the emotions. Someone might be feeling anxious because they're thinking, I'm not good enough for this, or everyone is going to judge me if I make a mistake. Motivational layer. What they want at the deepest level are the underlying needs and desires. Someone might be arguing about a deadline because they want to feel competent, or they might be avoiding a conversation because they need to feel safe. The prediction game. One of the most powerful applications of mentalizing is the ability to predict how someone will respond to different situations. This isn't about being manipulative. It's about understanding people well enough to communicate with them effectively and to meet their needs. Start playing the prediction game. Before you enter a conversation, ask yourself, based on what I know about this person, how are they likely to respond to what I'm about to say? What are they worried about? What do they care about most? What would make them feel heard and understood? Then, after the conversation, check your predictions. Were you right about their concerns? Did they respond the way you expected? What did you miss? This process of prediction and feedback is how you rapidly improve your mentalizing skills. Common mentalizing mistakes. The projection trap. This is assuming that others think and feel the same way you do. Just because you would be offended by something doesn't mean they will be. Just because you need a lot of detail doesn't mean they do. The assumption error. This is making up stories about what others are thinking without checking your accuracy. You see someone frown and assume they're angry, when they might just be concentrating. You notice someone being quiet and assume they're upset, when they might just be tired. The single factor fallacy. This is attributing someone's behavior to just one cause when it's probably multi-causal. Someone might be short with you not because they're angry at you, but because they're stressed about work, worried about their health, and running late for an appointment. The context blindness. This is failing to consider the situation and environment when interpreting someone's mental state. Someone might be acting differently because they're in a formal setting, because they're around certain people, or because they're dealing with pressures you don't know about. Building your mentalizing muscle. Like any skill, mentalizing gets stronger with deliberate practice. Here are some specific exercises to build your theory of mind. The perspective-taking exercise. Several times a day, pick someone you interact with and ask yourself, what is it like to be them right now? What are they thinking about? What are they worried about? What do they want from this interaction? Don't just make wild guesses. Base your inferences on what you observe. Their posture, their tone of voice, their word choices, their energy level. What story do these clues tell? The emotion detective game. When you're watching movies or TV shows, try to identify the emotions that characters are feeling beyond what they're saying. Look for the micro-expressions, the body language, the subtext. This is great practice, because you can often check your accuracy by seeing how the story unfolds. The prediction practice before meetings or conversations. Make specific predictions about how different people will respond. Write them down. Then after the interaction, check your accuracy. Where were you right? Where were you wrong? What did you miss? Mentalizing in real time. The ultimate goal is to be able to mentalize in real time during conversation. This means staying aware of what the other person is thinking and feeling as the conversation unfolds, and adjusting your approach accordingly. This requires a kind of split attention, part of your mind focused on the content of what's being said, and part focused on the process of what's happening in the other person's mind. It's like being a tennis player who's not just watching the ball, but also reading their opponent's body language to predict where the next shot will go. When you develop this skill, conversations become much more fluid and effective. You know when to slow down, because you can see they're getting overwhelmed. You know when to change topics, because you can sense they're losing interest. You know when to ask a direct question, because you can feel they want to share something but don't know how. The empathy connection. Mentalizing and empathy are closely related but distinct skills. Mentalizing is about understanding what someone is thinking and feeling. Empathy is about feeling what they're feeling. The most socially intelligent people can do both. When you combine accurate mentalizing with genuine empathy, you create a powerful form of human connection. You're not just understanding someone intellectually, you're feeling with them emotionally. This creates a sense of being truly seen and understood that most people rarely experience. The mentalizing mindset. Ultimately, becoming skilled at mentalizing requires a fundamental shift in how you approach other people. Instead of being focused primarily on what you want to say or how you want to be perceived, you become genuinely curious about what others are experiencing. This curiosity isn't just intellectual, it's emotional. You develop a genuine interest in the rich inner lives of the people around you. You start to see conversations not just as exchanges of information, but as opportunities to understand the complex, fascinating, and often hidden mental worlds of others. When you develop this mindset, you'll find that your relationships become deeper, your conversations become more meaningful, and your ability to influence and connect with others grows exponentially. You'll discover that the most powerful tool for social intelligence isn't what you say, it's how well you understand what others are thinking and feeling. The human mind is endlessly complex and fascinating. When you learn to read it accurately, you unlock the secret to truly connecting with others. You become someone who doesn't just hear what people say. You understand what they mean, what they need, and what they're really looking for in their interactions with you. Chapter 13, Social Triggers. Spotting what activates people. We all have them. Those invisible emotional buttons that, when pressed, can turn a calm conversation into a heated argument in seconds. Maybe yours is being interrupted, or being told you're wrong, or feeling like someone isn't really listening to you. Whatever it is, when it happens, you can feel your entire nervous system light up like a Christmas tree. Now imagine if you could spot these triggers in others before they exploded. Imagine if you could navigate conversations with such awareness that you rarely accidentally set someone off. And imagine if you could manage your own triggers so well that you stayed calm and clear even when someone else was pushing every button you have. This isn't about walking on eggshells or manipulating people. It's about developing the social intelligence to recognize what activates people emotionally, so you can communicate in ways that bring out the best in them rather than the worst. It's about understanding the hidden emotional landscape that shapes every human interaction. The truth is, most of us are completely unconscious of our own triggers, let alone other people's. We react first and understand later. We defend, attack, or shut down without even realizing what hit us. But the most socially intelligent people have learned to recognize these patterns in themselves and others, and they use this awareness to navigate relationships with remarkable skill. What are social triggers really? A social trigger is any stimulus that activates someone's emotional alarm system. It's usually connected to a core fear, an unmet need, or a past wound. When triggered, people don't just feel an emotion, they feel compelled to act on it, often in ways that aren't helpful or productive. These triggers aren't character flaws or signs of weakness. They're part of being human. We all have experiences that taught us to be afraid of certain things, to be sensitive to certain treatment, or to be protective of certain values. The problem isn't having triggers, it's being unconscious of them. Understanding triggers is like having a map of someone's emotional landscape. You can see where the landmines are buried, where the sensitive areas lie, and where the safe paths run. This doesn't mean you avoid every potentially triggering topic. It means you approach them with awareness and skill. The anatomy of a trigger. When someone gets triggered, you can often see it happen in real time if you know what to look for. There's usually a sequence that unfolds. The activation moment. This is when the trigger hits. You might see a micro-expression of surprise, hurt, or anger flash across their face. Their body might tense. Their breathing might change. There's often a split second where you can see them register that something important just happened. The emotional flood. Next comes the emotional reaction. Their nervous system floods with stress hormones. They might become visibly angry, defensive, or withdrawn. Their voice might change, getting louder, quieter, or taking on a different tone. This is when they're most likely to say or do something they'll regret later. The reactive response. This is when they act on the emotion. They might argue, attack, defend, shut down, or storm off. Their response is usually disproportionate to what actually happened, because they're not just responding to the current situation, they're responding to all the times they felt this way before. The aftermath. After the initial reaction, there's often a period of justification or regret. They might double down on their position, or they might feel embarrassed about their reaction. Either way, the relationship has been affected, and both people are left dealing with the emotional residue. Common universal triggers. While everyone has their own unique triggers, there are some that are nearly universal. Understanding these can help you navigate most social situations more skillfully. Feeling unheard or dismissed. This is perhaps the most common trigger. When people feel like their thoughts, feelings, or experiences aren't being acknowledged or valued, they often react strongly. You might see this when someone interrupts, changes the subject, or seems to minimize what they're saying, feeling judged or criticized. Most people have some sensitivity to criticism, but for some, it's a major trigger. Even constructive feedback can feel like a personal attack. You might notice defensiveness, counterattacks, or withdrawal when this trigger is activated. Feeling controlled or micromanaged people, who value autonomy and independence, often get triggered when they feel like someone is trying to control them. This might show up as resistance, rebellion, or anger when someone gives unsolicited advice or tells them what to do. Feeling disrespected or devalued. This trigger is about dignity and worth. When people feel like they're being treated as less important or less valuable, they often react strongly. You might see this in response to condescending tone, being ignored, or being treated as inferior. Feeling unsafe or threatened. This can be physical, emotional, or social safety. When people feel like their security is at risk, their fight or flight response kicks in. This might happen when someone raises their voice, invades their space, or threatens their reputation. Spotting individual trigger patterns. While universal triggers give you a baseline understanding, everyone has their own unique sensitivity patterns. Learning to spot these requires careful observation and genuine curiosity about what makes each person tick. Watch for emotional shifts. Pay attention to moments when someone's emotional state changes suddenly. What was happening right before the shift? What did you say or do? What topic were you discussing? These moments often reveal trigger points. Notice physical reactions. Bodies often react to triggers before minds do. Watch for sudden changes in posture, facial expressions, breathing patterns, or energy levels. Someone might cross their arms, lean back, tense their jaw, or start fidgeting when they're triggered. Listen for voice changes. People's voices often change when they're triggered. They might speak faster, slower, louder, or quieter. Their tone might become sharper, flatter, or more defensive. These vocal changes are often more reliable indicators than the words themselves. Track behavioral patterns. Notice how different people respond to stress or conflict. Some people become more talkative. Others withdraw. Some get argumentative. Others become passive-aggressive. Understanding someone's pattern helps you recognize when they're triggered. The story behind the trigger. Every trigger has a story. Behind every emotional reaction is usually a past experience, a core belief, or a deep fear. You don't need to know the whole story to be helpful, but understanding the general theme can guide your response. The competence story. Some people get triggered when they feel like their competence is being questioned. This might stem from experiences of being criticized, compared to others, or made to feel inadequate. They might react strongly to suggestions, corrections, or any implication that they don't know what they're doing. The belonging story. Others get triggered when they feel excluded, rejected, or like they don't fit in. This might come from experiences of being left out, bullied, or made to feel different. They might be sensitive to social signals, group dynamics, or any sense of being on the outside. The control story. Some people get triggered when they feel powerless or out of control. This might stem from experiences of being dominated, manipulated, or having their choices taken away. They might react strongly to pressure, demands, or any situation where they feel their autonomy is threatened. The security story. Others get triggered when they feel unsafe or uncertain. This might come from experiences of instability, betrayal, or unexpected change. They might be sensitive to unpredictability, conflict, or any situation that feels chaotic or threatening. Managing your own triggers. Before you can skillfully navigate other people's triggers, you need to understand and manage your own. This isn't about becoming emotionless. It's about developing enough self-awareness that you can choose your response rather than being controlled by your reactions. Trigger awareness practice. Start by mapping your own triggers. What situations, words, or behaviors tend to set you off? What's the story behind each trigger? What are you afraid of or trying to protect when you get triggered? Keep a trigger journal for a week. Every time you notice yourself getting emotionally activated, write down what happened, what you felt, and what you think the trigger was about. Look for patterns. The pause practice. When you feel yourself getting triggered, practice pausing before you respond. Take a breath. Notice what's happening in your body. Ask yourself, what am I really reacting to here? What am I afraid of? What do I need in this moment? This pause doesn't have to be long. Even a few seconds can make a huge difference. It's the space between stimulus and response where your power lies. The reframe practice. Often triggers lose their power when we reframe the situation. Instead of thinking they're attacking me, try they're struggling with something and expressing it poorly. Instead of they don't respect me, try they're dealing with their own stress and it's affecting their behavior. This isn't about making excuses for bad behavior. It's about not taking things personally when they're not actually personal. Navigating other people's triggers. Once you can recognize triggers in others, you have choices about how to respond. The key is to respond to the need behind the trigger, rather than the trigger itself. When someone feels unheard, slow down and really listen. Reflect back what you're hearing. Ask questions that show you're trying to understand their perspective. Sometimes people just need to feel acknowledged before they can move forward. When someone feels criticized, separate the person from the behavior. Focus on specific actions rather than character judgments. Use I statements about your experience rather than you statements about their failures. Acknowledge what they're doing well before addressing what needs to change. When someone feels controlled, give them choices. Ask for their input. Explain your reasoning rather than just giving directives. Respect their autonomy even when you disagree with their choices. When someone feels disrespected, acknowledge their perspective and expertise. Use respectful language and tone. Avoid condescension or dismissiveness. Treat them as an equal even when you're in a position of authority. When someone feels unsafe, create psychological safety. Lower your voice. Give them space. Be predictable and consistent. Avoid sudden movements or aggressive body language. The de-escalation toolkit. When someone is already triggered, you need specific tools to help them calm down. The validation technique. Acknowledge their emotional experience without necessarily agreeing with their interpretation. I can see this is really upsetting to you, or this is clearly important to you, can help someone feel heard. The curiosity approach. Ask genuine questions about their experience. Help me understand what you're feeling. Or, what's your biggest concern about this? This shifts the conversation from defensive to exploratory. The empathy bridge. Share your own vulnerability or relate to their experience. I felt frustrated in similar situations, or I can understand why that would be upsetting. Creates connection. The collaborative reframe suggests working together to solve the problem. How can we figure this out together? Or, what would need to happen for both of us to feel good about this? This shifts from adversarial to collaborative. Trigger prevention. The best way to deal with triggers is to avoid activating them unnecessarily in the first place. This doesn't mean walking on eggshells. It means being thoughtful about how you communicate. Check your tone. Your tone of voice often matters more than your words. A respectful, curious tone can make difficult feedback much easier to hear. A dismissive or condescending tone can turn a simple request into a major conflict. Time your feedback. People are more receptive to feedback when they're not stressed, rushed, or dealing with other problems. Pay attention to timing and context. Lead with appreciation when you need to address a problem. Start by acknowledging what's working. This creates a foundation of respect and safety that makes difficult conversations easier. Make it about behavior, not character. Focus on specific actions rather than personality traits. When you interrupt me, I feel unheard, is much easier to receive than you're always so rude. The bigger picture. Understanding triggers isn't just about avoiding conflict. It's about creating connections. When you can recognize what activates people and respond skillfully, you become someone others feel safe with. You become someone who brings out the best in others, rather than triggering their worst. This skill transforms not just your conversations, but your relationships. People feel more understood, more accepted, and more valued when you interact with them. They're more likely to be open, honest, and collaborative, because they don't feel like they need to defend themselves around you. Remember, everyone is carrying invisible wounds and fears. When you develop the ability to see these sensitive areas and navigate around them skillfully, you're not just improving your social intelligence, you're contributing to a more compassionate, understanding world. The most socially intelligent people understand that behind every trigger is a human being trying to protect something important to them. When you can see the fear behind the anger, the hurt behind the defensiveness, and the need behind the reaction, you can respond in ways that heal rather than harm, that connect rather than divide. Chapter 14. Conversational Intelligence. Picture this. You're at a dinner party, and you notice two conversations happening simultaneously. In one corner, people are leaning in, laughing, building on each other's ideas, and time seems to fly by. In the other corner, there's awkward silence, people checking their phones, and everyone looks like they're waiting for an escape route. What's the difference? It's not the topics being discussed. Both groups might be talking about work, travel, or current events. It's not the people involved. Both groups have intelligent, interesting individuals. The difference is conversational intelligence. Conversational intelligence is the ability to read the subtle rhythms and patterns of dialogue, to know when to speak and when to listen, when to go deeper and when to pivot, when to challenge and when to support. It's the difference between conversations that drain energy and conversations that create it. Most people think good conversation is about having interesting things to say, but the truth is, conversational intelligence is much more about how you say things, when you say them, and how you respond to what others are saying. It's about understanding that every conversation has an invisible structure, a flow and a rhythm that you can learn to read and influence. The hidden structure of conversation. Every conversation, whether it's a casual chat or a formal meeting, follows certain predictable patterns. Understanding these patterns is like learning to read music. Once you see the structure, you can participate much more skillfully. The opening phase. This is where conversational tone and energy are established. People are unconsciously asking, is this going to be a good conversation? Do I feel comfortable here? Are these people I want to engage with? The opening phase is crucial because it sets expectations for everything that follows. If someone feels judged, bored, or uncomfortable in the first few minutes, they'll likely stay guarded for the rest of the conversation. The exploration phase. This is where the real conversation happens. People share ideas, tell stories, ask questions, and build on each other's contributions. The energy should feel collaborative rather than competitive, curious rather than judgmental. The deepening phase. In good conversations, there's often a moment where things get more meaningful. People move beyond small talk to share something more personal, vulnerable, or important. This is where real connection happens. The transition phase. This is where topics naturally shift, or the conversation moves in a new direction. Skilled conversationalists can feel these transitions coming and help guide them smoothly. The closing phase. Good conversations have natural endings that leave people feeling satisfied and connected. Poor conversations either drag on past their natural conclusion or end abruptly without closure. Reading conversational cues. Conversational intelligence begins with your ability to read the subtle signals that tell you how the conversation is going and what needs to happen next. These cues are constantly flowing through every interaction, but most people miss them because they're too focused on what they want to say next. Energy cues. Pay attention to the overall energy level of the conversation. Is it rising or falling? Are people becoming more animated or more subdued? Energy is contagious, and skilled conversationalists know how to read it and influence it. Rising energy might sound like faster speech, more interruptions, the good kind, laughter, people leaning in, or multiple people wanting to contribute. This usually means the conversation is working well. Falling energy might sound like longer pauses, shorter responses, people checking their phones, or someone dominating while others withdraw. This usually means something needs to change. Interest cues. People constantly signal their level of interest through their words, tone, and body language. Learning to read these signals helps you know when to continue with a topic and when to shift. High interest cues include follow-up questions, personal stories related to your topic, leaning in, sustained eye contact, or building on what you've said. Low interest cues include short responses, changing the subject, looking around the room, checking devices, or polite but generic responses like, "That's nice," or "interesting." Comfort cues. People also signal their comfort level with the conversation topic and the social dynamics. This is crucial information because uncomfortable people don't engage authentically. Comfort cues include relaxed posture, sharing personal information, disagreeing respectfully, or showing vulnerability. Discomfort cues include closed body language, surface-level responses, avoiding eye contact, or seeming eager to change topics. The art of conversational timing. One of the most important aspects of conversational intelligence is timing. Knowing when to speak, when to listen, and when to shift gears can make the difference between a conversation that flows and one that stumbles. When to jump in. Many people struggle with when to enter a conversation or when to contribute to an ongoing discussion. The key is to look for natural openings rather than forcing your way in. Natural openings include when someone finishes a complete thought, when there's a natural pause, when someone looks around the group as if inviting others to respond, or when the energy dips slightly. Avoid jumping in when someone is clearly in the middle of a story, when emotions are running high, or when someone has asked a specific question to another person. When to hold back. Sometimes the most intelligent thing you can do in a conversation is to stay quiet. This might be when someone is sharing something vulnerable, when they're working through a problem out loud, or when they clearly need to be heard more than they need advice. When to pivot. Skilled conversationalists can sense when a topic has run its course and know how to gracefully transition to something new. This might be when energy is dropping, when someone seems uncomfortable, or when the conversation has become repetitive. The rhythm of turn-taking. Conversations have a natural rhythm, like a dance. Understanding this rhythm helps you participate more gracefully and helps others feel included. The give and take. Good conversations involve a balanced exchange. If you're doing most of the talking, you need to create space for others. If you're not contributing much, you need to engage more actively. Pay attention to the ratio. In a group of 4 people, ideally everyone should be contributing roughly 25% of the conversation. Wide imbalances usually indicate that something is off. The building pattern. The best conversations build on previous contributions. Instead of just waiting for your turn to speak, listen for ways to connect your ideas to what others have shared. This might sound like, "That reminds me," or "building on what you said," or "I had a similar experience," but this creates a sense of collaborative construction rather than individual performances. The question-answer elaborate pattern. Many conversations follow a natural pattern where someone asks a question, someone answers, and then they elaborate or others ask follow-up questions. Understanding this pattern helps you know when to ask, when to answer, and when to draw out more information. Reading the room. Conversational intelligence also involves understanding the group dynamics and adjusting your approach accordingly. Different situations call for different conversational styles. The formal context in professional settings, meetings, or formal events. Conversations tend to be more structured, goal-oriented, and polite. Understanding these contexts helps you match the appropriate tone and style. The casual context in relaxed social settings, conversations can be more playful, personal, and free-flowing. Reading the room helps you know when it's appropriate to be more casual or when you should maintain more formality. The emotional context. Sometimes conversations are happening in emotionally charged contexts, after difficult news, during celebrations, or in times of stress. Your conversational approach needs to match the emotional reality of the situation. The art of the follow-up question. One of the most powerful tools in conversational intelligence is the follow-up question. This is what separates skilled conversationalists from those who just exchange information. The curiosity question. These questions show genuine interest in understanding someone's experience more deeply. What was that like for you? Or how did you figure that out? Or what surprised you most about that situation? The clarifying question. These questions help you understand exactly what someone means. When you say challenging, what specifically made it difficult? Or can you give me an example of what you mean? The feeling question. These questions invite people to share their emotional experience. How are you feeling about all of this? Or, what's your gut reaction to that? The exploring question. These questions help someone think more deeply about their own experience. What do you think made the difference? Or looking back, what would you do differently? Managing conversational breakdowns. Even skilled conversationalists encounter moments when conversations go off track. Knowing how to recover from these moments is crucial. The awkward silence when conversation stalls. Resist the urge to fill the silence with nervous chatter. Sometimes a pause is exactly what's needed. If the silence continues, you might acknowledge it. I'm taking a moment to think about what you said, or gently shift topics. This makes me curious about the monopolizer. When someone is dominating the conversation, you need to create space for others without being rude. Try redirecting. That's fascinating, John. Sarah, I'm curious about your perspective on this. Or, let me pause you there, because I want to make sure we hear from everyone. The tangent. When conversations go off track, you can gently guide them back. This is interesting, and it reminds me of what we were discussing earlier about. Or let's circle back to what Maria was saying about the conflict when disagreement arises. Skilled conversationalists can navigate it without letting it derail the entire conversation. Acknowledge different perspectives. I can see we have different views on this. Let's explore both sides, or redirect to common ground. It sounds like we both care about the same outcome, even if we disagree on the approach. The power of conversational generosity. One of the hallmarks of conversational intelligence is what I call conversational generosity, the ability to make others feel heard, valued, and included. This isn't about being self-sacrificing, it's about understanding that good conversations benefit everyone. Making others look good. Skilled conversationalists know how to highlight others' contributions, build on their ideas, and help them express themselves more clearly. This creates an environment where everyone feels valued and wants to participate. Sharing the spotlight instead of trying to be the most interesting person in the room. Focus on being the most interested. Ask questions that help others share their expertise, experiences, and perspectives. Creating connection points. Look for ways to connect different people's contributions. What you're saying reminds me of something Alex mentioned earlier. Or, I think you and Jennifer have similar experiences with this. The conversational safety net. Part of conversational intelligence is knowing how to help others when they're struggling. Maybe someone is nervous, can't find the right words, or has shared something vulnerable. The rescue. When someone is struggling to express themselves, you can help without embarrassing them. Are you thinking about something like, or I think what you might be getting at is, gives them a way to clarify or redirect. The bridge. When someone shares something vulnerable, acknowledge it appropriately. Thank you for sharing that, or that took courage to tell us, helps them feel safe and valued. The inclusion. When someone seems left out or quiet, Create opportunities for them to contribute. I'm curious about your experience with this, or what are your thoughts on what we've been discussing? Developing your conversational intelligence. Like any skill, conversational intelligence improves with practice and attention. Here are some ways to develop it. The observation practice start. Paying attention to conversations from a meta level. Notice the patterns, the energy shifts, the cues people give. Watch how skilled conversationalists navigate different situations. The feedback loop. After conversations, reflect on how they went. What worked well? What felt awkward? What did you notice about the other person's responses? This self-reflection accelerates learning. The experimentation mindset. Try different approaches and notice the results. What happens when you ask more questions? When you share more personal stories? When you acknowledge people's emotions? When you change your energy level? The curiosity cultivation. Develop genuine curiosity about others. The more interested you are in understanding people's experiences, perspectives, and thoughts, the more naturally you'll ask good questions and listen effectively. The long game of conversational intelligence. Ultimately, conversational intelligence isn't just about having better individual conversations, it's about building better relationships. When people feel heard, understood, and valued in their interactions with you, they're more likely to trust you, collaborate with you, and want to spend time with you. This skill compounds over time. The more you practice reading conversational cues, managing timing, and creating inclusive dialogue, the more natural it becomes. You'll find yourself effortlessly navigating social situations that used to feel challenging. You'll become someone others seek out for meaningful conversations. You'll be the person who can bring out the best in others, who can navigate difficult topics with grace, and who can create connection even in challenging circumstances. Remember, every conversation is an opportunity to practice. Whether you're talking to a colleague, a friend, or a stranger, you can work on reading cues, managing timing, and creating connection. The more you practice, the more skilled you become, and the more your relationships, personal and professional, will flourish. The most socially intelligent people understand that conversation is both an art and a skill. They know that the quality of our conversations determines the quality of our relationships, and the quality of our relationships determines the quality of our lives. When you master conversational intelligence, you're not just becoming a better talker, you're becoming a better human being. Chapter 15. Status games, power, prestige, and subtle signals. You walk into a meeting and before anyone says a word, you can feel the invisible hierarchy in the room. There's something about the way people position themselves, the subtle deference in their voices, the way certain people's opinions carry more weight than others. You're witnessing status games in action, the complex, often unconscious dance of power, prestige, and social positioning that shapes every human interaction. Most people are completely unaware of these dynamics. They react to status signals without understanding what's happening, find themselves inexplicably intimidated by certain people, or struggle to command respect in professional and social settings. They're playing a game they don't even know exists, with rules they've never learned. But here's the truth. Status games are happening, whether you're conscious of them or not. People are constantly making assessments about where you fit in the social hierarchy, and you're doing the same about them. The question isn't whether you're playing, the question is whether you're playing skillfully. The most socially intelligent people understand that status isn't about dominance or putting others down. It's about understanding the subtle signals that communicate competence, confidence, and social value. It's about learning to navigate these dynamics in ways that elevate everyone involved rather than diminishing others. What status really means. Status isn't just about money, titles, or formal authority. It's about perceived value in any given context. A renowned chef has high status in a kitchen, but might have lower status in a medical conference. A skilled musician has high status in a recording studio, but might defer to a mechanic in an auto shop. Status is contextual, dynamic, and often invisible. It's communicated through hundreds of microsignals that we pick up unconsciously. The way someone sits, speaks, moves, and responds to others all broadcast information about their social position and how they expect to be treated. Understanding status dynamics isn't about becoming manipulative or power-hungry. It's about recognizing that these dynamics affect every interaction and learning to navigate them with awareness and skill. The anatomy of status signals. Status is communicated through multiple channels simultaneously. Most people focus on obvious indicators like clothing or job titles, But the most powerful status signals are much subtler. Physical presence. High status people tend to take up space comfortably. They sit back in chairs, use gestures that extend beyond their body, and move with deliberate confidence. They don't fidget, apologize for their presence, or try to make themselves smaller. Low status behaviors include hunched shoulders, minimal eye contact, fidgeting, self-soothing gestures like hair touching or leg bouncing, and general apologetic body language. Vocal patterns. Your voice is one of the most powerful status indicators. High-status vocal patterns include speaking at a slightly slower pace, using downward inflection at the end of statements, comfortable pauses, and a relaxed tone that doesn't seek approval. Low-status vocal patterns include uptalk, ending statements with a rising inflection, speaking too quickly, filler words like and like, and a tone that sounds like you're asking permission rather than making statements. Interaction patterns. High-status people tend to be comfortable with silence, don't rush to fill conversational gaps, and aren't afraid to disagree or challenge others respectfully. They ask questions from a position of curiosity rather than insecurity. Low-status interaction patterns include over-explaining, seeking constant validation, difficulty disagreeing, and rushing to fill any silence with nervous chatter. Attention dynamics. Status is often about attention flow. High-status people tend to receive more attention, their words carry more weight, and others often look to them for approval or guidance. They're comfortable being the center of attention when appropriate, but they also know how to direct attention to others. The status paradox. Here's something counterintuitive. The more you obviously try to display high status, the more low status you appear. True confidence doesn't need to prove itself. Authentic authority doesn't require constant assertion. This is why flashy displays of wealth, name-dropping, or constant self-promotion often backfire. They signal insecurity rather than confidence. The most high-status people are often the most understated. They let their competence and presence speak for themselves. Earned versus assumed status. There's an important distinction between earned status and assumed status. Earned status comes from demonstrated competence, expertise, character, and value. Assumed status is based on external factors like titles, wealth, or social connections. While both forms of status have social impact, earned status is more stable and respected. You can lose assumed status quickly if circumstances change, but earned status based on your actual capabilities and character is much more durable. The confidence-competence loop. One of the most important aspects of status dynamics is the relationship between confidence and competence. People often assume that confidence indicates competence, and competence breeds confidence. This creates a feedback loop that can work for or against you. When you display genuine confidence, not arrogance, people are more likely to give you opportunities to demonstrate competence. When you demonstrate competence, your confidence naturally increases. This positive cycle can accelerate your social and professional growth. The key is ensuring your confidence is grounded in actual capability rather than empty posturing. Authentic confidence comes from knowing your strengths, being honest about your limitations, and being willing to learn and grow. Reading status dynamics. In groups. Every group has its own status hierarchy, and learning to read these dynamics quickly is a crucial social skill. When you enter a new group, pay attention to who speaks first and most often, whose opinions carry the most weight, who do others look to for approval or guidance, who interrupts whom, and who gets interrupted, who sits where, and how do people position themselves. These observations help you understand the existing hierarchy and navigate it appropriately. This doesn't mean you need to accept or reinforce unfair hierarchies, but understanding them helps you work within or challenge them more effectively. The art of appropriate status. Skilled status navigation isn't about always trying to be the higher status person in the room. It's about calibrating your status appropriately for the situation and your goals. Matching status. Sometimes it's appropriate to match the status level of others. In peer relationships, displaying similar status levels creates comfort and equality. If you're too high status, you might intimidate others. If you're too low status, you might not be taken seriously. Strategic difference. Sometimes it's wise to display lower status temporarily to achieve your goals. This might mean deferring to someone's expertise, showing respect for their experience, or acknowledging their authority in a particular domain. Elevating others. One of the most powerful status strategies is helping others feel important and valued. When you can make others feel high status without diminishing yourself, you create loyalty, gratitude, and positive relationships. Status signals in professional settings. Understanding status dynamics is particularly important in professional contexts, where hierarchy and influence significantly impact career success. Meeting dynamics in meetings. Status is displayed through seating choices, speaking patterns, and interaction styles. Higher status people often sit at the head of the table, speak with authority, and are less likely to be interrupted. Email communication. Even email communication contains status signals. Higher status people tend to write shorter emails, take longer to respond, and use fewer pleasantries. They're more likely to make statements than ask questions. Presentation style. When presenting, high status people tend to use fewer filler words, make more eye contact, use confident gestures, and speak with conviction. They're comfortable with pauses and don't rush through their material. The dark side of status games. While understanding status dynamics is important, there's a dark side to status games that you need to be aware of. Some people use status tactics to manipulate, intimidate, or control others. Learning to recognize and respond to these tactics is crucial for your well-being and success. Status attacks. Some people try to lower others' status to elevate their own. This might include public criticism, dismissive comments, interrupting, or subtle put-downs. Recognizing these tactics helps you respond appropriately, rather than being emotionally affected. Status anxiety. Constantly worrying about your status can be emotionally exhausting and counterproductive. People who are overly concerned with their position often display insecurity, which actually lowers their status. Status manipulation. Some people try to artificially inflate their status through deception, exaggeration, or taking credit for others' work. While this might work temporarily, it usually backfires when the truth emerges. Building authentic status. The most sustainable approach to status is building authentic influence based on genuine value and character. This takes time, but it creates lasting respect and influence. Develop real competence. The foundation of authentic status is actual capability. Continuously developing your skills, knowledge, and expertise gives you genuine confidence and credibility. Be generous with recognition. People who freely acknowledge others' contributions and successes are often held in high regard. This generosity of spirit elevates others while enhancing your own reputation. Show consistent character. Reliability, integrity, and consistency build trust and respect over time. People are more likely to defer to someone they trust and admire. Add value to others. Focus on how you can help others succeed, rather than just advancing your own position. This creates a network of people who appreciate and support you. Status flexibility. One of the hallmarks of social intelligence is status flexibility, the ability to adjust your status display appropriately for different situations and relationships. Context awareness. Different contexts require different status expressions. Your status display at a formal business meeting should be different from your status display at a casual social gathering. Relationship awareness. Your status expression should also vary based on your relationship with others. With peers, you might display equal status. With mentors, you might show appropriate deference. With mentees, you might display confident authority. Goal alignment. Your status display should align with your goals. If you want to learn from someone, showing some deference can be helpful. If you want to lead a team, displaying appropriate authority is important. The status mindset shift. The most important change you can make is shifting from a scarcity mindset about status to an abundance mindset. Instead of seeing status as a zero-sum game where someone else's elevation means your diminishment, see it as expandable. When you help others feel valued and important, you don't lose status, you gain it. When you acknowledge others' expertise, you don't appear weak, you appear confident and secure. When you share credit and recognition, you don't lose influence, you build loyalty and respect. Practical status strategies. The competence display. Share your expertise naturally, through helpful contributions rather than boastful announcements. Show your knowledge through your questions, insights, and ability to add value to discussions. The confidence calibration. Develop genuine confidence through preparation, practice, and continuous learning. Authentic confidence is magnetic and creates trust. The respect reciprocity. Treat others with respect, regardless of their position. This demonstrates secure confidence and often elevates your status in the eyes of observers. The value addition. Focus on contributing value in every interaction, Ask yourself, how can I help? What can I contribute? How can I make this better? The long-term perspective. Remember that authentic status is built over time through consistent character and competence. Focus on long-term relationship building rather than short-term status gains. Status mastery. Ultimately, mastering status dynamics isn't about dominating others or climbing social ladders. It's about understanding the invisible forces that shape human interactions and learning to navigate them with wisdom and skill. When you understand status, you can communicate more effectively, build stronger relationships, and create more positive outcomes in both personal and professional settings. You become someone who elevates others while maintaining your own dignity and influence. The most socially intelligent people understand that true status comes from adding value to others' lives, from being someone others can trust and respect, and from using whatever influence you have to create positive change. Status gains are a reality of human social life. The question isn't whether you'll encounter them, it's whether you'll navigate them with awareness, skill, and integrity. When you do, you'll find that you can achieve your goals while helping others achieve theirs, creating a positive cycle of mutual elevation and respect. Chapter 16. Influence without force. How socially intelligent people persuade, without pressure. The most powerful influence happens when people don't realize they're being influenced at all. It feels like their own idea, their own discovery, their own choice. This is the hallmark of social intelligence, the ability to guide others toward better decisions while preserving their autonomy and dignity. Traditional persuasion often relies on force, manipulation, or overwhelming logic, but socially intelligent people understand that sustainable influence comes from understanding what already motivates someone and aligning your request with those existing motivations. It's not about changing someone's mind, it's about helping them discover what they already want to do. The foundation of influence without force begins with deep listening. When someone shares their concerns, dreams, or challenges, they're giving you a roadmap to their decision-making process. The socially intelligent person doesn't immediately jump to solutions or counter-arguments. Instead, they ask questions that help the person explore their own thoughts more deeply. Consider how a skilled therapist operates. They rarely tell clients what to do directly. Instead, they ask questions that lead clients to their own insight. What do you think would happen if you tried that approach? How does that align with what you said was important to you? What's stopping you from taking that step? This questioning technique, called the Socratic method, is incredibly powerful because it honors the person's intelligence while guiding them toward clearer thinking. One of the most effective influence techniques is the yes ladder. This involves starting with small agreements and gradually building toward larger ones. But the socially intelligent person doesn't manufacture artificial agreements. They find genuine common ground and build from there. If you're trying to influence someone to consider a new approach at work, you might start by acknowledging the challenges they've identified, agreeing on the desired outcome, and then exploring options together. The key is to never make someone feel cornered or pressured. The moment someone feels their freedom is threatened, they activate what psychologists call reactance, a psychological resistance that makes them want to do the opposite of what you're suggesting. Instead of pushing harder when you meet resistance, the socially intelligent person steps back, acknowledges the resistance, and explores it with curiosity. Stories are another powerful tool for influence without force. When you tell a relevant story about someone else who faced a similar situation, you're not directly telling the person what to do, you're giving them a model to consider, a different perspective to explore. The story creates psychological distance that makes it easier for them to consider new options without feeling defensive. Timing is crucial in influence without force. Pushing someone toward a decision when they're stressed, distracted, or emotionally charged rarely works. The socially intelligent person recognizes these states and either waits for a better moment or helps the person process their emotions first. Sometimes the most influential thing you can do is simply be present with someone's frustration or confusion without trying to fix it immediately. The concept of motivated reasoning is essential to understand. People don't make decisions based purely on logic. They make emotional decisions and then use logic to justify them. This means that effective influence often involves helping someone feel good about a decision emotionally before presenting the logical case. If someone feels judged or criticized, they'll resist even the most logical argument. One powerful technique is to help people visualize the positive outcomes of their potential decision. Instead of focusing on what they should avoid or what's wrong with their current approach, help them imagine what success looks like. If this worked out exactly as you hoped, what would that look like? How would you feel? What would be different? This kind of future-focused visualization taps into their intrinsic motivation. The socially intelligent person also understands the power of options. Instead of presenting a single solution, they might offer 2 or 3 possibilities and let the person choose. This preserves their sense of autonomy while still guiding them toward better outcomes. Even if all the options lead to similar results, the act of choosing makes the person feel more invested in the outcome. Influence without force also requires genuine respect for the other person's right to make their own choices, even if those choices seem suboptimal. This isn't just a technique, it's a philosophical stance. When you truly believe that people have the right to make their own decisions, even mistakes, your influence becomes more authentic and therefore more effective. The most sophisticated form of influence, without force, is helping people discover their own values and priorities, then showing them how your suggestion aligns with those values. This requires patience and skill, but it creates the strongest possible motivation for action. When someone acts in accordance with their deeply held values, they're far more likely to follow through consistently. Chapter 17. Trust Signals. Building believability through behavior. The micro-behaviors that make people feel safe, seen, and open. Trust is the invisible foundation of all meaningful human connection. Without it, even the most skilled communication techniques feel manipulative and hollow. But trust isn't built through grand gestures or explicit statements. It emerges from thousands of tiny behavioral signals that communicate safety, reliability, and genuine care. The most fundamental trust signal is consistency between your words and actions. When you say you'll call at 3 p.m., you call at 3 p.m. When you promise to follow up on something, you follow up. This might seem basic, but in a world where people routinely overpromise and underdeliver, consistent follow-through becomes a powerful differentiator. But consistency goes deeper than just keeping your word. It includes emotional consistency, responding to similar situations in predictable ways. If you're warm and engaged on Monday but cold and distant on Tuesday for no apparent reason, you've sent a confusing signal that erodes trust. People need to know what to expect from you emotionally. Your body language sends constant trust signals, often more powerful than your words. Genuine trust signals include open posture, appropriate eye contact, and matching your facial expressions to your words. When you say you're excited about something while maintaining a flat expression, you've created a disconnect that people feel at a subconscious level. The speed of your responses also communicates trust or distrust. Answering too quickly can signal that you're not really listening or that you had a predetermined response. Answering too slowly might suggest you're being deceptive or withholding information. The optimal response speed feels natural and indicates that you're processing what was said while being ready to engage. One of the most powerful trust signals is your willingness to be vulnerable appropriately. This doesn't mean oversharing or dumping your problems on others. It means being willing to admit when you don't know something, acknowledging your mistakes, and sharing relevant personal experiences that show you understand their situation. Vulnerability signals that you're human and trustworthy, rather than perfect and distant. The way you handle disagreements reveals your trustworthiness. Trustworthy people can disagree without becoming disagreeable. They can challenge ideas without attacking the person. They can express their perspective firmly while still showing respect for others' viewpoints. This creates psychological safety that encourages honest communication. Your attention patterns send powerful trust signals. When you're fully present with someone, phone away, eyes focused, genuinely engaged, you're communicating that they matter. Conversely, divided attention signals that they're not worth your full focus. In our distracted world, full presence has become a rare and precious gift. Trust is also built through your response to others' vulnerability. When someone shares something personal or admits a mistake, your response in that moment significantly impacts their trust in you. The trustworthy response is acceptance without judgment, appreciation for their honesty, and often reciprocal vulnerability. Making someone feel foolish or weak for opening up destroys trust instantly. The way you talk about others when they're not present is a crucial trust signal. If you consistently speak negatively about people behind their backs, others will naturally assume you do the same about them. Conversely, if you speak respectfully about others and redirect gossip toward more productive topics, you signal that you're trustworthy with sensitive information. Your competence in your domain also affects trust. People need to believe you can deliver on what you promise. This doesn't mean you need to be perfect, but you do need to be honest about your capabilities and limitations. Overstating your abilities destroys trust faster than admitting your constraints. The concept of earned trust versus given trust is important to understand. Some people start with high trust and withdraw it when disappointed. Others start with low trust and gradually build it based on evidence. The socially intelligent person adapts their trust-building approach based on the other person's style, while maintaining their own authentic behavior. Microexpressions play a crucial role in trust signals. These brief, involuntary facial expressions often reveal true feelings before we can consciously control them. While you can't completely control microexpressions, you can work on aligning your conscious thoughts with your stated intentions. When you genuinely care about someone's well-being, your microexpressions will naturally support that message. Trust signals also include your response to stress and pressure. People watch how you handle difficult situations because it reveals your character. Do you become defensive and blame others, or do you take responsibility and work toward solutions? Do you maintain your values under pressure, or do you compromise them for convenience? These moments of stress are when trust is most clearly built or destroyed. The pacing of relationship building also sends trust signals. Pushing too hard for intimacy or connection can signal neediness or manipulation. Moving too slowly might suggest disinterest or emotional unavailability. The socially intelligent person calibrates their approach based on the other person's comfort level and reciprocity. Finally, trust signals include your boundaries and how you maintain them. People actually trust you more when you have clear boundaries and stick to them consistently. It shows that you're not just saying what you think others want to hear, but that you have principles and self-respect. Paradoxically, your willingness to say no appropriately makes your yes more meaningful. Chapter 18. The Art of the Exit. Ending conversations smoothly. How to close interactions in a way that leaves a lasting impression. The end of a conversation is like the final note of a song. It determines the emotional resonance that lingers long after the interaction is over. Yet, most people give little thought to how they conclude their conversations, missing a crucial opportunity to strengthen relationships and leave positive impressions. A skilled conversational exit serves multiple purposes. It provides closure for both parties, ensures that important points are remembered, creates anticipation for future interactions, and demonstrates respect for everyone's time and energy. The way you end a conversation can transform a mundane exchange into a memorable connection. The foundation of a good exit is recognizing the natural rhythm of conversation. Every conversation has an arc, a beginning, middle, and natural endpoint. Fighting against this rhythm creates awkwardness and frustration. The socially intelligent person learns to sense when a conversation is approaching its natural conclusion and works with that energy rather than against it. Timing is crucial in conversational exits. Ending too abruptly can feel rude and leave the other person feeling cut off. Dragging out a conversation past its natural endpoint creates discomfort and diminishes the overall experience. The key is to recognize the subtle signals that indicate a conversation is ready to conclude. Decreased energy, longer pauses, checking phones or watches, shifting body language, or the resolution of the main topic.